Chapter 4820. It's not as simple as just outstanding results, right? Shopkeeper Chai, I really want to know how you were transferred here. Why don't you explain it to me? Lin Yi's face darkened. Honest Chai saw that Lin Yi's expression was not right and immediately reacted. Even though he looked weak and honest, he was still a businessman. His shrewdness was unquestionable, and this could be seen from how he dared to secretly record Wei Xiaodong's shady accounts. Vice President, don't think too much about it. Outstanding results is just a cover. This matter is indeed complicated. Let me slowly explain it to you. Honest Chai hurriedly admitted. Speak, I'm listening. Lin Yi said without batting an eyelid. Actually, it wasn't because of my outstanding results in the South Continent. On the contrary, it was because they saw that I had made the Y branch's business bigger and stronger. Thus, the higher-ups from the headquarters wanted to take over the Y branch, using the excuse that my promotion was not in line with the rules to suppress me. Then, they sent their own trusted aides to take over the Y branch, Honest Chai said with a bitter smile. Lin Yi nodded, even though he had never been to the headquarters of the Hong family enterprise. But from Hong Zhong's previous experience, he could tell that the people from the headquarters were indeed like that. Because they had hitched a ride on the Equal Heaven Escort Agency, everyone was originally disdainful of the Y branch. But in the end, they discovered that it had suddenly become a juicy cake. Especially Honest Chai, the current shopkeeper who did not have much experience and was promoted as a special case. It would be strange if no one thought of taking over. What happened after that? Lin Yi asked. You also know that other than you and Vice President Hong, I don't know any of the higher-ups from the headquarters. Originally, this matter was already set in stone, and no one would speak up for me. In the end, after Vice President Hong heard the news, he rushed back to the headquarters on Middle Island overnight to speak up for me. Honest Chai said emotionally. With old Hong's character, it's not strange for him to do so. Lin Yi smiled faintly. Hong Zhong was an experienced businessman, but Lin Yi realized that he was still a chivalrous man deep down in his bones. He was willing to sacrifice himself for his friends, and that wasn't something Hong Zhong wouldn't do. It was said that all businessmen were unscrupulous. Hong Zhong's character was actually not suitable for his identity. In many cases, only unscrupulous people could climb up the ladder faster, while people like him would be ostracized. However, Hong Zhong was very suitable to be an ally, a reliable ally who could trust him with his back. Yes, but the situation during the meeting was full of twists and turns. Even though Vice President Hong tried his best, he was still unable to secure my position as the Y-Arc branch's manager. There was no choice. They were adamant that a local promotion was against the rules. Even though it was due to the special circumstances back then, the special circumstances have long passed. Naturally, we have to set things right. Honest Chai smiled bitterly. Getting rid of the donkey once it's out of the millstone. Lin Yi could imagine the situation back then. Hong Zhong must have been extremely helpless and dejected. This was something that could not be helped. Even though he was the vice president, he did not have the authority to speak. Helping Honest Chai at the last minute would only result in him returning in defeat. This was already a foregone conclusion. If not for Vice President Hong's insistence, this matter would have ended there. No one would have paid any attention to me as the previous Y-Arc branch's manager. I would not even be able to remain as the original vice president. However, Vice President Hong strongly argued that I was a meritorious person. Even if I were to be transferred out of the Y-Arc branch, I must not be dealt with carelessly. Otherwise, it would disappoint everyone. Honest Chai grinned at this point and rejoiced. Come to think of it, I was really lucky. The Morning Star branch's manager was about to be transferred, and the position became vacant. So you took advantage of the situation and transferred over here? It can't be that easy, right? Lin Yi asked doubtfully. Of course it's not that easy. Every carrot has its own pit. This Morning Star branch's manager position has already been eyed by another high-ranking member of the headquarters. That person is Wei Xiaodong's backer, Vice President Ren. Honest Chai said. After Wei Xiaodong's matter, he still has the face to continue eyeing this place? Lin Yi curled his lips in disdain. Vice President Hong also raised this objection on the spot. After all, because of Wei Xiaodong, This Morningstar branch has already fallen out with the Morningstar Academy. You should know the situation here in Morningstar City. From top to bottom, the Morningstar Academy has the final say. How can one live a good life if they fall out with the Morningstar Academy? The reason why the previous manager applied for a transfer was because he could no longer continue working here. Otherwise, who would give up such a lucrative position so easily? Honest Chai shook his head. If that's the case, even though this is the East Continent, it's no longer a lucrative position. Once it's sealed off by the Morningstar Academy, it can't even be compared to the Y branch. No wonder it landed on you. Lenny laughed. Indeed, but that Vice President Ren did not intend to give up this position. It's just that Vice President Hong said that I was personally promoted by you. Furthermore, you have a good relationship with the higher-ranking members of the Morningstar Academy, especially since your junior sister is the personal disciple of the godly nun of the Eastern Sea. It would be more convenient for me to start my business here. With this, the other higher-ranking members of the headquarters had no objections. After all, it doesn't affect their own interests. Furthermore, that Vice President Run had nothing to say due to Wei Xiaodong's previous stain. Thus, this matter was decided. I see. He looked at Honest Chai apologetically. It seemed like he had wronged him. This manager of the Morningstar branch also had many twists and turns. These were all things that Vice President Hong told me in his letter. Actually, even after I mentioned your name, that Vice President Ren still didn't want to let go. However, the higher-ranking member who suggested for me to be transferred started arguing with him. He couldn't even take care of himself, so he had no choice but to accept his fate. Honest Chai laughed. Oh, that fella is afraid that if he doesn't settle you down, his position as the Y branch's manager won't be stable. That's fine too. Let them fight amongst themselves, and you'll be able to take advantage of it. Lenny couldn't help but laugh. It's all thanks to you that I'm able to take advantage of this situation. If it were anyone else, it would be a chore. When I first arrived, this branch was already on the verge of closing down. Thankfully, I found Miss Wong to help me plead for mercy. Finally, I managed to get the godly nun of the Eastern Sea to speak up and restore our relationship with the Morningstar Academy. Because of this, I was able to gain a foothold here. Otherwise, it would be hard to say what would happen to me. Honest Chai rejoiced. Chapter 48:21. Are you talking about the purchasing Deacon Sheen Deli? After the incident with Wei Xiaodong, his days were not good. However, he had a backer in the Morningstar Academy, so he wasn't arrested and pushed all the blame onto our Hong Merchant Association. But this time, the Vice Dean of Eastern Ocean personally came forward, so even he wouldn't dare to obstruct us. After all, he already has a criminal record. Honest Chai explained. And that's good. You've worked hard during this period. He patted Honest Chai's shoulder. After understanding the situation, he felt much more relaxed. After all, if Honest Chai really betrayed them, even if he could clean up the house, he wouldn't feel good about it, because that would only mean that he had misjudged him. Not all. I only got to where I am today because of you and Vice President Hong's care. It's not hard work, it's what I should do. Seeing that he finally believed in him. Honest Chai heaved a sigh of relief. Do a good job. You should know what kind of people old Hong and I are. We won't mistreat our own people. He encouraged. Although Honest Chai wouldn't be of much use, he had a unique side to him in the Merchant Association. As long as he could guarantee his loyalty, there was no harm in nurturing him. Thank you very much for your kindness. I will definitely sacrifice my life for you until the day I die. Honest Chai immediately expressed his stance. He was honest and cowardly, but he wasn't a fool. At this moment, he had to show his loyalty. Otherwise, if he were to be reserved, he might ruin his future. He chuckled and remembered the notice he saw on the street. All right, do you know about the Morningstar auction? I do. It's the highest level auction in Morningstar City. It's held irregularly. The last time it was held was 5 years ago. Honest Chai nodded and asked, could it be that you're interested? That's right. I like to experience it, but I don't know the rules. He nodded. I'm sure everyone knows the rules. As long as you are a disciple of the Morningstar Academy, you can participate. All the large merchant associations here also have their own quotas. For example, Our Hong Merchant Association can recommend our own people or acquaintances to participate. If you want to participate, why don't you use your own quota? Honest Chai suggested. All right, I'll leave this matter to you. Lin Yi smiled. He wanted to participate in this auction purely on a whim, but since the disciples of the Morningstar Academy could participate, he might even have the chance to meet Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao. As the two of them were talking, someone suddenly called out from outside the door, "Shopkeeper, the bill is ready. Do you want to take a look now?" Honest Chai looked at Lin inquisitively, to which Lin Yi smiled nonchalantly. "It's fine. If you have something to do, you can go and do it first. Don't mind me." Honest Chai nodded and said to the door, "Old Chai, come in. Is not an outsider inside." As soon as he said that, a middle-aged man with a long beard entered. Lin Yi looked at him and felt that he looked familiar. After thinking for a while, he finally remembered that this was someone from the Y-Arc branch. Back then, when he and Hong Zhong had helped Chai Laoshi to become the branch manager of the Y-Arc branch. In order to better control the situation, they had allowed Chai Laoshi to pick someone to be the branch's assistant manager. Chai Laoshi had recommended this person. Cui Mingshan looked at Lin Yi after entering and was stunned for a while. He hurriedly cupped his hands and greeted. "Cui Mingshan greets Vice President Lin." "Haha, why are you here too?" Lin Yi asked with a smile. Although he had not interacted much, Cui Mingshan could be considered one of his and Hong Zhong's men in the Hong family commerce. Replying to Vice President Lin, this subordinate took the initiative to apply for a transfer after hearing about Shopkeeper Chai's matter. Otherwise, a new emperor will bring his own subordinates. After Shopkeeper Chai leaves, this subordinate will definitely have a hard time. Cui Mingshan smiled bitterly as he looked at Honest Chai. This was a living example. Back in the Y-Arc branch, before Wei Xiaodong came, he was the glorious vice shopkeeper. In the end, when Wei Xiaodong came, he was immediately kicked to the side and became a complete idler. If not for his good fortune of meeting a great benefactor like Lin Yi, he might have been sitting on the bench for the rest of his life. Actually, Old Chai's luck is not bad. Although the transfer of a vice shopkeeper does not need to go through all the higher-ups in the headquarters, other than having the support of the higher-ups, there must be a corresponding vacancy. At that time, the vice shopkeeper of the Morningstar branch applied to be transferred back to the headquarters in Middle Island because his performance was too bad. He would rather go back and do nothing than a frown here. Thus, the position was vacated for Old Chai. Honest Chai added with a smile. "Not bad. With the two of you here, you can take care of each other and control the situation better. Working hard in the branch may be difficult for others, but it is a rare opportunity for the two of you. Work hard in the future, and if you have any difficulties, you can look for me and Elder Hong anytime. We are all on the same side, and we will not sit idly by." Lin Yi nodded. Originally, whether it was Honest Chai or Cui Mingshan, it was impossible for them to be transferred to the East Continent. However, after Wei Xiaodong and the series of events that followed, the two of them were forcefully pushed to their current positions. This kind of successful experience could not be replicated by others. As the saying goes, heroes are created by the times. Thank you, Vice President Lin, for your concern. Cui Mingshan was overjoyed. Just like Honest Chai, he did not have any backing. Although he was part of Lin Yi and Hong Zhong's faction, he was at most Honest Chai's follower. Today, he finally received Lin Yi's acknowledgement. This was something he had always dreamed of. "All right, Old Chai, let's reminisce about the past later. You said that the list is ready?" Honest Chai asked. "That's right. This is the auction item for today's auction. Please take a look." Cui Mingshan immediately handed over a list. Although this was a core secret of the Merchant Association, and it could be easily used by their competitors if it was leaked, Lin Yi was not an outsider in their eyes. Thus, there was no need to hide it. Lin Yi leisurely sat at the side and drank his tea. Honest Chai took the list and scanned it. Immediately, he furrowed his brows and stared at it for a long time. Chapter 48:22. Shopkeeper, I know what you're saying. I've really done my best. I've tried everything that I can think of. Cui Mingshan smiled helplessly and bitterly. This? Honest Chai scratched his head. Although it was a great achievement, to make use of Huang Xiaodao's relationship with the Morningstar Academy. If they would make a fool of themselves during the auction, and their competitors took advantage of it, they might not be able to keep their position as partners. There's nothing we can do. The Morningstar Academy branch was already in a mess before we came here. The suppliers that we've been in contact with have all switched to other companies. Although it has recovered a little in the past half a year, it won't be able to return to its previous scale in a short period of time. It's easier said than done to get high-quality goods. Cui Mingshan sighed helplessly. Seeing the two dejected expressions, Lin Yi, who was drinking tea at the side, was slightly taken aback. He immediately said, "Let me see the list." Oh. Although Honest Chai felt a little embarrassed, he still passed the list to Lin Yi. Lin Yi took a quick look. The goods listed weren't of low quality. At least in the South Continent and the other Heaven Islands, they were already rare goods. However, in Lin Yi's eyes, more than half of them weren't that precious. If Lin Yi was like this, then there was no need to mention the wealthy and distinguished guests of the East Continent. It would be difficult to attract much attention with just these goods, let alone stand out in an auction like the Morningstar auction. The dignified Hong Merchant Association would be laughed at if they couldn't bring out any decent goods. Are the goods being auctioned this time very important? Lin Yi couldn't help but ask. From what the two said, this auction seemed to have a great impact on the Hong Merchant Association. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so distressed. It's extremely important. Vice Chairman Lin, you might not know this, but the Morningstar auction is actually aimed at our Hong Merchant Association. Our success or failure will directly affect whether we can gain a foothold here. Honest Chai laughed bitterly. Oh, isn't this the highest standard auction in Morningstar City? Why are they targeting our Hong Chamber of Commerce? Lin Yi couldn't help but ask curiously. The reason is actually very simple. Ever since we fell out with the Morningstar Academy, our Morningstar Academy has been on the decline. Since then, the rights to cooperate with us have fallen into the hands of a few of our competitors. However, because the Vice Dean of the EC Academy personally spoke up, we managed to snatch back the rights to cooperate with them. That's why we have a grudge against them. Honest Chai explained. Even if there's no such thing, we're competitors to begin with. Does it really matter whether we have a grudge or not? Lin Yi said non-committally. The two of us have just arrived and haven't even seen the shopkeepers of the other branches of the Hong Clan Merchant Association, who would be so kind as to supply us. This kind of high-grade pill is directly related to one's performance. Everyone would hide it, unless they have a good relationship. Only then would they be able to save the day. Moreover, they would have to return it immediately. Otherwise, it would be useless even if they were beaten to death. Honest Chai smiled bitterly. From a certain perspective, the competition between the branches of the Hong Clan Merchant Association was even more intense than the other merchant associations. After all, the competition with the other merchant associations only affected the merchant association's profits. However, the competition between the shopkeepers of the same branch would directly affect each other's futures. Then how did it come about? Lin Yi asked curiously. As far as he knew, Level 6 and Level 7 elixirs were not available through normal channels. They were either supplied internally by the Hong Chamber of Commerce or cooperated with the school's alchemists. There shouldn't be a third way. To tell you the truth, these pills were all bought one by me and Old Chai from other cities. It was basically a losing business, but in order to keep up appearances, we had no choice. Honest Chai said bitterly. Chapter 48-23. When he first walked into the Hong Merchant Guild, he felt that the business here was flourishing with each passing day. However, it was actually filled with danger. If not for him coincidentally bumping into them, Honest Chai and Cui Mingshan might have fallen into misfortune or even be finished. Doesn't that mean that the aristocratic guild will definitely win? Lin Yi asked. Since the head alchemist of the Morningstar Academy was the aristocratic guild's ally, the other guilds, including the Hong Merchant Guild, would not be able to compete with them in terms of high-grade pills. When the time comes, the Hong Merchant Guild would definitely be in the limelight. That might not be the case. It's true that the aristocratic guild has the support of the Academy's head alchemist, and it would be easy for them to obtain high-grade pills. However, if they were to auction off the pills refined by the Academy's alchemist, it would not be considered as having any ability. If the Morningstar Academy decided that the aristocratic guild would be the aristocratic guild, because of this, wouldn't they be slapping their own faces? Honest Chai shook his head. Using the Academy's own pills to give to the aristocratic guild, and then letting the aristocratic guild auction it off to the Morningstar Academy. If this were to spread, people would definitely laugh their heads off. The higher-ups of the Academy would not do such a stupid thing. He nodded his head and laughed. That's right. However, the aristocratic guild is still very popular this time. Other than the Academy's alchemist, they have their own channels. Rumor has it that they have prepared a set of 10 golden condensing nascent pills. Honest Chai sighed, unable to conceal the envy on his face. One cannot blame him for being envious. The golden condensing nascent pill was the main pill in the Eastern Continent's Golden Level C. Because most of the students here were Golden Core and Nascent Soul experts, everyone could use it. Thus, the price would naturally soar. Especially if a set of 10 was put up for auction, it would definitely fetch a sky-high price. Only 10 golden condensing nascent pills. Linny smiled faintly after hearing that, and said something shocking. Then we'll auction 5 Thunder Profound pills. Huh? What did you say? Honest Chai and Cui Mingshan were dumbfounded. They looked at each other in disbelief, thinking that they were hallucinating. Linny smiled and didn't say anything. He took out the lightning Shin pills he refined in Soaring Cloud Academy and lined them up in front of the two. Every time he took out a pill, Honest Chai and Cui Mingshan sucked in a breath of cold air. By the time all 5 pills were laid out on the table, the two of them were completely dumbfounded. What? Is that not enough? He glanced at the two of them. No. Honest Chai and Cui Mingshan waved their hands. As the shopkeeper and vice shopkeeper of the branch, they were people who had seen the world. Taking out 5 lightning Shin pills in one go was already heaven-defying enough. The 10 golden soul pills that the rich families would give out were on a completely different level compared to this. The value of these pills couldn't even be mentioned in the same breath. In the Yellow Steppe Sea region of the Eastern Continent, the golden nascent condensation pill could only be regarded as the pursuit of ordinary disciples, while the real elite disciples were all trying to break through to the profound ascension realm. Only the profound thunder pill was the pill that they dreamed of, and it was something that they wanted to obtain at all costs. Still not enough? That's fine. Hurry up and get some ingredients. I will use this opportunity to refine some rare pills. Beauty pill and other ingredients can be brought over. Hurry up. Linny ordered. Beauty pill? You can even refine pills of this grade? Honest Chai and Cui Mingshan were completely shocked. They didn't even know that He was an alchemist. Moreover, he was a rare 7th grade alchemist. This was enough for him to become the chief alchemist of the school. It's all right. I've only refined the profound lightning pill before. I haven't tried the beauty pill before. I can give it a try. He smiled. Vice President is truly an expert. Honest Chai and Cui Mingshan looked at each other with 3 words written on their faces. I'm convinced. Originally, they were at their wits' end. But with the sudden appearance of a great god like all their problems were easily solved. The two of them couldn't wait to send out orders to prepare all kinds of ingredients. The auction would begin in a few days, and time was of the essence. Linny thus stayed at the Hong Clan Merchant Guild to refine pills. The almighty Shishan who had been tailing Linny was speechless. He had been following Linny from afar until he saw Linny walk into the Hong Clan Merchant Guild. Then, he could only wait outside the door. After all, the Hong Clan Merchant Guild might not have as detailed an inspection as an inn, but large-scale merchant guilds like this would have surveillance arrays installed. Who knows, his identity as a heretic cultivator might be exposed. In the end, the almighty Shishan waited for an entire day. Even when the sky turned dark, he didn't see Linny coming out. He couldn't help but feel bewildered. What's going on? Could he have escaped from the back door? But as soon as this thought popped up, he rejected it himself. That couldn't be. His divine sense had been enveloping the surroundings from morning to night, but he didn't find Lin Yi at all. Therefore, there was only one possibility. Lin Yi was still in the Hong Clan Merchant Guild. But now that the Merchant Guild was closed and Lin Yi didn't come out, the almighty Shishan couldn't wait any longer. He couldn't help but go up and ask, "Are there any customers inside?" The waiter in charge of closing glanced at him, shook his head, and said, "I'm sorry, all the customers have left. If you need anything, please come early tomorrow." "Is that so?" The almighty Shishan looked inside and saw that there was indeed no one inside. He could only shake his head and leave. As he walked, he muttered, "How can that be? That's impossible. TSK. But that kid does have some strange tricks up his sleeves. He might really be able to hide from my divine sense and escape. Could he ever turn to the inn?" Thinking of this, the almighty Shishan hurriedly ran back to the inn and waited there. Lin Yi made him suffer so much this time. He wouldn't let this dog off so easily. In the end, the almighty Shishan stayed there for 3 days. With his pitiful appearance as a beggar, the amount of spirit jades he collected was enough to make him rich. But he didn't even see half a shadow of Lin Yi. This time, the almighty Shishan was completely discouraged. Even a beggar who lived in the wilderness for so many days would lose his temper, let alone a mysterious ascended late-stage evil practitioner like him. If his fellow sect members saw him like this, he wouldn't be able to raise his head in his next life. There was no other way. The almighty Shishan couldn't endure it anymore. He decided to leave first and come back to settle the score with this dog after he recovered from his injuries. 5 days passed in a flash. Lin Yi stretched his back and walked out of the room that Honest Chai had specially prepared for him. In these few days, other than his normal cultivation, he had been busy refining elixirs. He only came out this morning because today was the official day of the Morningstar auction. Chapter 48-24. Lin Yi calmly arrived at the first floor, where a large group of busybodies had already gathered. Standing in the center was Honest Chai and a few middle-aged men dressed as businessmen. "Shopkeeper Chai, today is the day of the auction. I heard that your Hong Merchant Association has prepared quite a few good items. Can you take them out and let us old friends have a look?" One of the middle-aged men said with a smile that wasn't a smile, "Shopkeeper Hao, before the auction ends, we are not allowed to divulge the information of the auction items. This is a clear rule of the Morningstar auction. However, the auction items of your prestigious Metropolis Association seem to have caused quite a commotion recently." Honest Chai replied in a tone that was neither servile nor overbearing. "Ha! Our prestigious Metropolis Association is not like your Hong Merchant Association who hides things. As the saying goes, don't tell others if you have nothing to say. Since it is something that is destined to be auctioned, what's wrong with letting everyone know a few days in advance? At least we can be mentally prepared. Furthermore, this is approved by the Morningstar Academy. Even if you want to complain, there's no use." Shopkeeper Hao said with a confident smile. "That's right, Shopkeeper Chai. Have you forgotten? In order to warm up the auction, every merchant association can divulge 1 or 2 items in advance. Of course, it has to be something good. However, I don't think we've heard of the Hong Merchant Association divulging anything." Another middle-aged man, dressed as a shopkeeper, said maliciously, "Shopkeeper Jean, they're different from us. If they have something good, they will hide it well. Who asked them to be the sole supplier of the Morningstar Academy? Of course, they have to do things with style." Shopkeeper Hao said, Shopkeeper Hao's words are wrong. I don't think they have anything good to take out. From what I see, the sole supplier for the Morningstar Academy will fall into the hands of your aristocratic guild. After all, a set of 10 golden condensing nascent pills is a huge sum of money. In the future, please take good care of my gold chamber of commerce." Shopkeeper Jean said, echoing each other, Of course, of course. However, we still have to ask Shopkeeper Chai. They are the final item of the auction. What if they're hiding something big? Shopkeeper Chai, why don't you divulge it?" Shopkeeper Hao glanced at Honest Chai. "Shopkeeper Hao, Shopkeeper Jean, did you come here just for this?" Honest Chai looked at the two of them with a smile that didn't seem like a smile. Before Lin Yi came, his heart was filled with trepidation. But now, a set of 10 golden condensing nascent pills? That was nothing. Sort of. Manager Hao and Manager Jean looked at each other and smiled. Actually, they had already investigated the background of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. This time, the Hong Chamber of Commerce was basically forced to the edge of a cliff. There is absolutely no chance for them to make a comeback, unless the sun rose from the west. Then I'm really sorry. Not revealing one's wealth has always been the motto of our Hong Merchant Guild. Regardless of whether it's an explicit rule of the auction, as long as it's an item that our Hong Merchant Guild is providing, we will not leak any information before the auction to prevent any loss of fairness. If the two of you are really curious, why don't you wait a little longer? In any case, the auction is about to begin. Honest Chai said indifferently. What a great loss of fairness. How admirable. Shopkeeper Chai, you're clearly trying to keep everyone's curiosity in suspense. Manager Hao said indifferently. Suspense doesn't matter. Since they're the grand finale, they have to put on a show. I'm just afraid that in the end, they won't be able to bring out anything decent. That would be a real joke. At that time, I don't think the Hong Merchant Guild will need to embarrass themselves anymore. They should just close down as soon as possible. That way, they can at least preserve some of their reputation. What do you say, Shopkeeper Chai? Shopkeeper Jean mocked without the slightest scruple. Shopkeeper Jean must be joking. Up until now, the Hong Merchant Guild has never closed down a single branch. Naturally, they won't set a precedent with me. However, the situation of your Golden Chamber of Commerce doesn't seem too optimistic. Recently, 5 branches have already closed down. I wonder how much longer Shopkeeper Jin's side can last. Honest Chai glanced at him and said, You. Shopkeeper Jean was instantly choked speechless. The Golden Chamber of Commerce wasn't a grand merchant guild. It couldn't be compared to a top-notch merchant guild like the Hong Merchant Guild. Recently, due to poor management, the Golden Chamber of Commerce had closed down 5 branches. This was already a serious blow. If this continued, the entire merchant guild might collapse. Helpless, the Golden Chamber of Commerce finally decided to fully support the Metropolis Guild. They wanted to use this opportunity to tide over this crisis. It was also because of this reason that Shopkeeper Jean was desperately trying to flatter Shopkeeper Hao. Shopkeeper Hao might very well become his direct superior in the future. Haha, Shopkeeper Chai, it seems like you've just arrived and aren't well informed. With our Metropolis Guild backing you up, it won't be easy for the Golden Chamber of Commerce to collapse. If you have the time, you should worry more about yourself. Shopkeeper Hao glanced at Honest Chai with disdain and immediately left with Shopkeeper Jean. Take care. I won't be sending you off. Honest Chai calmly waved his hand as if he wasn't going to budge, causing the surrounding crowd to look at him in a new light. Lin Yi slightly nodded his head at this scene. Although Honest Chai didn't have much of an aura to speak of and always gave others a feeling of weakness and being easily bullied from his neither servile nor overbearing demeanor, it seemed like this fellow was still capable of standing on the stage. Of course, this was all thanks to Lin Yi. If it weren't for the 7th grade Dan he had refined in the past few days, Honest Chai's heart would have been extremely weak. Facing Shopkeeper Hao and the others, he naturally wouldn't be so confident. You've come out of seclusion. Seeing Lin Yi come out, Honest Chai quickly and respectfully welcomed him. The surrounding crowd couldn't help but raise their eyebrows. What was this young man's background? Just a moment ago, Shopkeeper Chai was neither servile nor overbearing. How did he turn into a lackey the moment he saw him? The auction is about to begin, right? Lin Yi asked. That's right. Old Chue has already sent the auction items over. Why don't we head over now? Honest Chai asked. All right. Lin Yi nodded, and the two of them immediately set off for the auction. Although the Morningstar auction was hosted by Morningstar Academy, it wasn't held within the academy itself. Instead, it was held in a large building in Morningstar City named the First Pavilion. Arriving at the entrance of the First Pavilion, Lin Yi raised his head and couldn't help but exclaim, "This pavilion is really big." Chapter 48-25. Not only did the exterior look similar, but even the layout and structure of the interior were the same. However, compared to the iconic bullfighting ring in the secular world, this place was not only larger, but the various facilities were also more luxurious. Of course, the biggest difference was that this place was not open air. Surrounding it were a circle of exquisite and luxurious boxes, and below it was a huge and spacious area. There were hundreds of seats scattered around the area, and in the center of the area was an extremely conspicuous high platform. It was obviously the host platform for the auction. Lin Yi looked at the magnificent scene in front of him and could not help but be speechless. He had been to many high-class auctions before. Whether it was the one in the extreme North Island or the one in the Middle Island, they were all first-rate auctions. However, disregarding everything else, just the layout alone was slightly inferior to the one in front of him, as expected of the Eastern continent. The moment Lin Yi and Honest Chai entered the door, they saw shopkeeper Hao and shopkeeper Jean. When they saw Honest Chai, a playful smile appeared on their faces. "Shopkeeper Chai, I didn't expect to see you again so soon. Speaking of which, where are your seats?" Shopkeeper Hao asked with a face full of ridicule. As for Lin Yi, he did not even look at him, thinking that he was just a small follower. Number 1. Honest Chai pointed to the area in front of him. Number 1 was the table closest to the host platform, and was considered a very good seat. "Oh, it sounds like it's very impressive. But why did I hear that every single person with a bit of status has their own box? What's the meaning of this? Your Hong Merchant Guild is so famous, yet you can't even get a box and can only squeeze with the ordinary disciples? TSK, TSK. Shopkeeper Jean did not miss the opportunity to make sarcastic remarks. Honest Chai's expression changed slightly. This was indeed a thorn in his heart. It was obvious that the other competitors were ganging up against the Hong Merchant Union, and the Morningstar Academy was supposed to be the neutral judge. However, from the distribution of seats, the Academy's stance could be seen. Although table number 1 sounded impressive, it was basically putting the Hong Chamber of Commerce on fire. It would only be a joke. Otherwise, with the status of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, they would at least be able to get a VIP room, and they would at least be in the top 10. Listening to Shopkeeper Jin's words, your Golden Chamber of Commerce should have been allocated a private room, right? I wonder what number it is. Honest Chai retorted with a slap to his face. Shopkeeper Jean was once again rendered speechless. His old face turned red as he shrunk his neck back. What a joke. His Golden Chamber of Commerce was already on the verge of bankruptcy. It was already good enough that he could participate in this auction. How could he possibly be allowed to sit in the VIP box? Number 12. Shopkeeper Hao suddenly replied. That is the box of my aristocratic metropolis. Although the Golden Chamber of Commerce doesn't have one, it has already become a subsidiary of my aristocratic metropolis. Naturally, it can enter the box with me. I wonder if Shopkeeper Chai is interested? Honest Chai, I think you should quickly agree. Your Hong Chamber of Commerce may have a great background, but it is a pity that it cannot save your Morningstar Academy branch. If you rely on Shopkeeper Hao, you can at least keep a roof over your head. Furthermore, you won't have to squeeze below with the normal disciples and become a joke. We are all businessmen who care about appearances, and we want our face, don't you think so? Shopkeeper Jean cooperated. Yes, you are right. I do want my face, but it is a pity that you don't. Therefore, it is better for me to stay away from you, lest I become a joke. Honest Chai glanced at him. Being looked like a dog in front of his face, Shopkeeper Jean was instantly enraged. If not for the fact that the surroundings were filled with disciples of the Morningstar Academy guards, he would have fought with Honest Chai to the death. Although he was indeed Shopkeeper Hao's dog, how could he expose someone's scars like this? You won't shed tears until you see the coffin. Once the auction is over, it will be useless even if you beg me again. At that time, your Morningstar Academy branch won't even have the qualifications to be a subsidiary of my aristocratic metropolis. Just wait for it to close down. Shopkeeper Hao's expression turned cold, and he immediately left with Shopkeeper Jean. Lin Yi and Honest Chai looked at each other. They couldn't be bothered to look at this clown anymore, and directly walked towards table number 1. At this moment, the auction was about to begin, and people from all walks of life were entering the venue. In a short moment, the entire venue was filled with people, and it was extremely lively. Lin Yi swept his gaze around and realized that this was indeed the headquarters of the Morningstar Academy. More than half of the people in the venue were disciples of the Morningstar Academy, and the rest were people from all walks of life. However, one thing was for sure, these people definitely had an impressive background and connections, or else they wouldn't have the qualifications to enter the venue. With so many disciples of the Morningstar Academy, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao might be among them. Lin Yi immediately wanted to use his divine sense to investigate, but he realized that it was impossible to do so. It was as if there was some kind of special array that completely blocked his divine sense. Since he couldn't use his divine sense to investigate, Lin Yi could only use his eyes to confirm one by one. However, the problem was that the people in the VIP booths couldn't be seen unless they opened the curtains and the angle was just right, or else they wouldn't be able to see the situation inside the booths. After sweeping his gaze across everyone in the venue, Lin Yi could only return to his seat in disappointment. There was no sign of Wang Xinyan or Huang Xiaotao among them, but it wasn't strange after thinking about it. They were the only two personal disciples of the Divine Nun of the Eastern Sea, and with the Divine Nun of the Eastern Sea status, it was normal for them to be given a VIP booth. Amidst the hustle and bustle, the Morningstar auction ceremony finally began. A white-haired old man with a ruddy complexion walked up to the center of the stage under everyone's gazes. Following, there was a deluge of extravagant opening remarks. It turned out that this old man was the official host specially invited by the Morningstar Academy. The white-haired elder was only in charge of the opening speech, and the next person who walked up to the stage made Lin Yi's eyes light up. This was a familiar face, the dean of the Morningstar Academy, Ling Yuanqing. Chapter 48-26. Everyone was originally drowsy from listening, but after hearing Ling Yuanqing's last sentence, they immediately woke up. The one who spoke on stage was the highly respected Ling Yuanqing. If it was anyone else, they would have already started cursing. The white-bearded old man immediately took over the stage and mobilized everyone's emotions, saying, "Everyone, today is the first day of the auction, and it's a special auction for the Chamber of Commerce." In other words, all the auction items will be provided by each Chamber of Commerce. I hope that everyone will keep their eyes open, because the items you'll see today are all good items that you can't buy from your own Chamber of Commerce. If you miss this opportunity, you won't have another chance. Hearing him say this, everyone revealed an expectant expression. If these items could be bought normally, they wouldn't have to go through so much trouble to attend the auction. The first item of the auction is from the Aristocratic Chamber of Commerce, a set of 10 golden nascent gathering pills, all of which are of high quality. The starting price is 1 million spirit jades. The white-bearded old man immediately announced. There was an uproar below the stage. As expected of the rare Morning Star auction ceremony, the items that were auctioned off at the beginning of the auction were just some ordinary goods, but no one had expected that it would be such a heavyweight item this time. 10 high-grade golden nascent condensation pills were good stuff that one might not even be able to buy with spirit jades on normal days. Seeing everyone's shocked expressions, shopkeeper Hao, who was in box 12, couldn't help but reveal a proud expression. For the sake of this auction, the rich and powerful associations had put in a lot of effort. With great difficulty, they had managed to gather this group of high-quality golden pills. They were determined to obtain the qualifications to cooperate with the Morningstar Academy. Although the few chambers of commerce had joined forces to deal with the Hong Chamber of Commerce, after defeating the Hong Chamber of Commerce, they would still be competitors with each other. After spending so much effort, if they couldn't obtain the qualifications to cooperate with the Hong Chamber of Commerce in the end, then it would really be like drawing water with a bamboo basket. 1,100,000. Immediately, a man dressed in merchant attire called out impatiently. Although the Gathering Nascent Soul Golden Pill was a relatively common pill, it did not have a fixed price. Along with the market, it fluctuated greatly. especially for a high-quality, gathering, nascent soul golden pill. It could not be bought at 100,000 per pill. Even 200,000 depended on luck. 1.5 million. A voice from room 10 rang out. Everyone raised their eyebrows. Logically speaking, people at the level of the VIP box should not have much need for the gathering nascent soul golden pill, but ordinary disciples like them needed it more. Unfortunately, they did not have such strong financial resources. If each pill was sold separately, there would still be a chance, but now that they were auctioned in groups of 10, they could only look on and sigh. Actually, if it was just for the spiritual jades, according to past experience, it would be more worthwhile to auction them individually. However, the wealthy clans had made up their minds to use this opportunity to make a name for themselves. Naturally, they would not bother with such a small amount. 2 million. This time, the voice came from private room number 4. The audience went into an uproar once again. It wasn't because the number was too high, but because the identity of the owner of the voice was extraordinary. Although they didn't know the true identity of this person, the fact that he was able to be in the 4th box spoke for itself. As soon as private room number 4 opened his mouth, no one dared to bid anymore. Even the person in room number 10, who had previously opened his mouth, also stopped bidding. It seemed that he did not want to offend the other party because of this group of gathering nascent soul golden pills. In the end, this group of gathering nascent soul golden pills was sold for 2 million spiritual jades and fell into the hands of private room number 4. Regarding this result, shopkeeper Hao felt helpless. He held his forehead and did not know what to say. Although he had prepared some other auction items, the one he valued the most was still this group of gathering nascent soul golden pills. In his expectations, even if it could not reach 3 million, it would at least reach 5 million. In the end, because of the interference of private room number 4, he lost 500,000 spiritual jades. This simply made him want to cry, but have no tears. It's okay, it's okay. 2 million is also a rare good start. Including the other auction items, the total transaction value can reach at least 5 million. It is enough to overwhelm the other chambers of commerce. Shopkeeper Hao could only comfort himself like this. Indeed, as he expected, the next 5 auction items were all from his noble metropolis. Although it did not cause a sensation like the 10 superior gathering nascent soul golden pills, each of them was not an ordinary item. Adding them together, the final transaction value reached a huge amount of 3 million spiritual jades. Finally, he had reached the expected goal, which made him breathe a sigh of relief. Everyone, the next auction item is from the Wantong Conference, a 7th grade Great Recover pill. The starting price is 2 million spiritual jades. The white-bearded old man announced. The audience suddenly exclaimed. Even Lin Yi, who had been indifferent before, was slightly surprised. As an alchemist, of course, Lin Yi knew about the 7th grade Great Recover pill. This was relatively rare among all the 7th grade Great Recover pills. It could restore the injuries and true chi of a profound ascending stage master in a short period of time. Lung Ruofan had taken one in the process of fighting with him for half a month. Otherwise, he would not have survived at all. Lin, he was still slightly surprised. At this moment, shopkeeper Hao in the 12th box simply stared his eyes out. He thought that his 10 superior gathering nascent soul golden pills were already rare, but he did not expect that the Wantong Conference would quietly take out a 7th grade Great Recover pill. Shopkeeper Hao could not help but have an extremely bad premonition. Although there was only one, this 7th grade Great Recover pill was simply a second life for a profound ascending stage master. Its attraction was far stronger than his gathering nascent soul golden pills. Looking at the audience, these profound ascending stage masters in the VIP box were the real main force of the auction. 2 million. The first bid from a 6th box made shopkeeper Hao's heart cold. This was already comparable to the transaction price of 10 gathering nascent soul golden pills. 3 million. It was the 4th box again. 5 million. However, this time, the 6th box did not intend to retreat. Instead, it showed that he was determined to get it. 3 million. The fourth box called out again. All the spectators were shocked. Even if it was a 7th grade recover pill, 3 million spiritual jades was already a sky-high price. Who was sitting in the fourth box? Why was he so rich in spiritual jades? 1 million. The sixth box hesitated for a moment. 5 million. The number 4 booth immediately raised the price by a large margin. This time, not only was everyone shocked speechless, but the number 6 booth also lost its temper. In the end, this grade 7 great revitalizing pill fell into the hands of the number 4 booth, just like the 10 gathering nascent golden pills from before. Chapter 48:27. At this moment, shopkeeper Hao's tears flowed down his face. They were both in booth number 4, but his 10 golden condensing nascent pills were only worth 2 million spirit jades, while the other party's great returning pill was worth 3.5 million spirit jades. What was there to fight over? As expected, after a few auctions in the all-knowing gathering, the total transaction value was as high as 7,600,000 spirit jades, far surpassing the wealthy associations. Shopkeeper Hao's face instantly turned green with regret. Whether it was instigating the Morningstar auction ceremony or preparing all sorts of auction items, his wealthy guild was definitely the one who put in the most effort. In the end, the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. In the end, the all-knowing Grand Assembly had taken the lead. The auction continued, and the next to appear was the Eastern Continent's Eastern Chamber of Commerce. However, they were not as scheming as the previous two. Although the treasures they brought out were rare treasures, they were not large in quantity and did not have enough gimmicks. In the end, the total transaction value was only 5 million spirit jades. It seemed like they did not intend to compete for the partnership with the Morningstar Academy. From the beginning until now, although the crowd was in an uproar, he did not have any intention of bidding. With his capital, he obviously did not lack spirit jades. It was just that these auctioned items were too orthodox, and it was difficult for him to be interested in them. After all, he could refine the 7th grade great recovering pill himself, so there was no need for him to bid. This was a common problem with the Chamber of Commerce's auctions. If one wanted to see all kinds of strange treasures, they would have to wait until the individual auctions. All right, the next auction item is from the Central Chamber of Commerce. I believe everyone has heard of it. They're all high-tech products from the secular world. Before we start the auction, we will first demonstrate their functions. The white-bearded old man announced. As soon as he finished speaking, the staff of the Central Chamber of Commerce brought a series of technological products onto the stage and demonstrated them one by one. After all, if the functions of these things were not clearly explained, no one would know what they were used for. Of course, they would not be able to auction them. Tablets, digital cameras, walkie-talkies. He looked at the row of technological products on the stage and shook his head speechlessly. He even saw micro-tapping devices among them. If he didn't know that this was Heaven Stage Island, he might have thought that this was some kind of digital store in the secular world. After the demonstration, the auction continued. Although there weren't any elixirs or heavenly treasures this time, the audience's response was equally enthusiastic. However, although these technological products were novel, it was impossible for them to be like the 7th grade Great Revitalizing Pill, which was sold at a sky-high price of several million spirit jades. After all, no one was a fool. They could accept spending several tens of thousands of spirit jades for entertainment, but they couldn't afford to spend millions of spirit jades, unless water got into his head. In the end, the Central Chamber of Commerce's series of technological products only sold for less than 2 million spirit jades. This was also because of the large quantity. Otherwise, even 1 million would not be realistic. Of course, it was impossible for the Central Chamber of Commerce to compete with the Morningstar Academy. After all, what the Academy needed the most were various kinds of spirit jades, and this was precisely the Central Chamber of Commerce's weak point. It was not something that could be made up for in a short period of time. After watching this round of excitement, He sighed in disappointment. He had thought that the Central Chamber of Commerce would be able to communicate with the secular world like the Central Island auction. If that was the case, he would definitely bid for it. It was a pity that he didn't mention this matter from start to finish. It seemed like what Si Haixiao had said was true. The Central Chamber of Commerce had already stopped this business. Every Chamber of Commerce took the stage. Other than a few exceptions like the Eastern Chamber of Commerce and the Central Chamber of Commerce, almost all the chambers of commerce that participated in this auction were aiming for the Morning Star Academy's partnership. They all gave their all, and good things that could not be bought normally could be found everywhere. However, there was a huge disparity in the strength of the chambers of commerce. The small chambers of commerce could not be compared to the large chambers of commerce. It was fine for them to take out 1 or 2 precious items, but it was impossible for them to take out 8 or 10 of them at once. If it was just a normal treasure, it would obviously not be able to make it to this level of auction. As a result, there were very few chambers of commerce that could reach a total of 3 million spirit jades. As for the record of 6 million spirit jades, even the rich and powerful chambers of commerce could only look at it in the dust. If there were no accidents, the all-purpose Chamber of Commerce was destined to be the biggest winner of this auction. From then on, it would become the only supplier for the Morning Star Academy. It could be foreseen that in the future, the title of the #1 Chamber of Commerce in Morning Star City would change owners and fall on the head of the all-purpose Chamber of Commerce. One had to know that in Morning Star City, whether or not one could obtain the full support of the Morning Star Academy was a decisive factor for any Chamber of Commerce. After all the Chambers of Commerce had their turn, the last to appear was the Hong Chamber of Commerce. After all, it was the only Chamber of Commerce that cooperated with the Academy. According to common sense, it should be the last to appear. However, those with a discerning eye knew that the Hong Chamber of Commerce was not as good as it was in the past. It was a true sacrificial lamb in this auction. Although it sounded impressive to be the last to appear, it was actually done on purpose to embarrass him. Everyone knew that the last item had to be of a higher level than all the previous items. If it could not satisfy everyone's expectations, then the Hong Chamber of Commerce's reputation would be destroyed, and they would never be able to raise their heads in Morning Star City again. We worked so hard for nothing, and now we're letting that one guy take advantage of us. Luckily, us rich and powerful chambers of commerce have always been at odds with the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Destroying one of their branches can be considered an explanation to the higher-ups. Shopkeeper Hao comforted himself as he hid in box 12. That's right. With that little bit of ability of honest chai, he can't even take out a few golden nascent pills, let alone the finale. Just wait for him to make a fool of himself. Shopkeeper Jean laughed coldly. Everyone, there are still 4 more items to be auctioned. They are all from the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Please wait and see. The white-bearded old man introduced. As soon as these words were spoken, the insiders like Shopkeeper Hao, who were waiting to see a joke, revealed an as expected expression. The Hong Chamber of Commerce was truly at a dead end. Such an important auction actually only had 4 items to auction. One had to know that every Chamber of Commerce could only take out 10 items to auction. Even the Golden Chamber of Commerce had managed to gather 7 items. How could such a trashy Chamber of Commerce be a supplier to the Academy? They were simply a disgrace to the Morning Star Academy. Furthermore, the more items they took out, the higher the total transaction value. This Hong Chamber of Commerce was not even trying to make up for the numbers, and had given up. Chapter 48:28. This was the only time these people could be proud of themselves. They better not be shocked to the point that their jaws dropped. The Hong Merchant Association's first auction item is a set of 10 golden nascent gathering pills of supreme quality. The starting price is 1,500,000 spiritual jades. The white-bearded old man said excitedly. To be honest, even he was shocked when he saw the list for the first time. This was a rare supreme quality pill. Everyone in the audience instantly exploded. Although they were all gathering infant golden pills, high-quality ones were still commonly seen. However, top-quality ones were simply something that could only be discovered by luck. The rarity of these pills could even be compared to 7th grade pills. Normally, it was extremely difficult to even hear of one, let alone see one. Shopkeeper Hal and Shopkeeper Jean were so shocked that their jaws were dislocated. Their expressions were extremely colorful. They felt that they were already very impressive when they took out a set of superior golden nascent gathering pills. But in the end, they took out a set of supreme grade golden nascent gathering pills. Wasn't this a slap in the face in front of everyone? Without a doubt, the wealthy families would be completely trampled by the Hong Merchant Association. If they were different from each other, no one would expect the wealthy families to have them, even if the Hong Merchant Association took out the best. But now they both had 10 golden nascent gathering pills. One was only of superior quality, while the other was of supreme quality. The difference between the two was obvious. 3 million. Booth number 4 once again gained the upper hand. Before this, he had only bid 3 times, but each time, it was the main item of each Chamber of Commerce. Without a doubt, they were all rare and expensive items. And this time, he once again emphasized to everyone the impression he had before, that to him, spirit jades were really just a number. For a million. This time, the person who spoke was from room number 2. This was the first time he had made a bid, and everyone could not help but guess who was behind this. There were probably only a handful of people in Morningstar City who were qualified to be in room number 2. Although the golden nascent gathering pills were meaningless to these big shots, they were still useful to the younger generation of their sections, especially the rare supreme quality golden nascent gathering pills. Even late nascent soul realm experts would benefit greatly if they used them. They cannot be missed. 5 million. Booth number 4 refused to budge. As for the others, they could only look on and sigh again. At this price, even those large chambers of commerce would not dare to make a move, let alone these ordinary cultivators with limited wealth. This was destined to be a bidding game for the privileged. 5 million. Room number 2 spoke again, but this time, it was a middle-aged man's voice. Although he didn't do it on purpose, it gave off an oppressive feeling of power without being angry, causing people to instinctively not dare to resist. Lenny could not help but feel that this voice was somewhat familiar. Could it be one of the 3 Morning Star powerhouses, Weihe? This was very possible. After all, this vice dean had many disciples, and he reckoned that there were also many genius disciples at the Golden Core stage. The supreme grade golden nascent gathering pill just happened to be of great use to him. This time, booth number 4 didn't say anything. No one felt that he didn't have enough spirit jades on hand. Previously, he could use 5 million spirit jades to buy a grade 7 great recovery pill. This time, he definitely wouldn't be stingy with a mere 5 million spirit jades when faced with 10 supreme grade golden nascent gathering pills. Thus, there was only one explanation. Just like how booth number 6 didn't dare to provoke him, he didn't dare to compete with booth number 2 either. Thus, he had no choice but to concede. In the end, the group of supreme grade golden nascent gathering pills fell into booth number 2's pocket at the price of 5 million spirit jades. All the shopkeepers were instantly speechless. Just the first auction item had already reached 5 million spirit jades. It had already surpassed the grand auction's total transaction of 3 million spirit jades. What else could they do? In booth number 12, Shopkeeper Hao and Shopkeeper Jin's faces had already turned as black as the bottom of a pot. When they thought about how they had mocked and ridiculed Honest Chai, they felt ashamed. They thought that he didn't know how to appreciate their kindness, but it turned out that he was treating them like idiots. Next up is the second auction item from the Hong Merchant Guild, a 7th grade, great rejuvenating pill of high quality. The starting price is 8 million spirit jades. The white-bearded old man announced. The crowd was in an uproar again. This Hong Merchant Guild was doing this on purpose. They had just used a group of supreme-grade golden nascent gathering pills to slap the grand auction's face, and now they immediately started to slap the all-access auction's face. One had to know that the all-access auction's 7th grade great rejuvenating pill didn't even mention the word quality. According to the unwritten rules of the auction, This meant that it was only of normal quality. It couldn't even be compared to a medium-quality pill, let alone the Hong Merchant Guild's high-quality 7th grade, great rejuvenating pill. He shook his head slightly. He originally wanted to try for the supreme grade, but unfortunately, at the level of a 7th grade, great rejuvenating pill, even the divine armament cauldron couldn't guarantee the supreme grade. After refining a few times, there weren't many supreme grade pills. This showed how rare it was. Not only did it require the best ingredients, it also required good luck. Previously, a group of supreme grade golden nascent condensation pills was already shocking enough. This time, a superior 7th grade Great Recover pill was released. Not only the people in the venue, but even the VIP boxes were in a commotion. It was also able to heal the injuries and chi of a profound ascending stage master, but the recovery speed between normal quality and high quality was too different. Normal quality needed a day, while high quality only needed an hour. Under normal circumstances, there wasn't much difference, but when it came to a critical moment, the difference between an hour and a day could very well be the difference between life and death. This was a real second life. Finally, after a fierce competition, this 7th grade great rejuvenating pill was sold for a sky-high price of 6.8 million spirit jades. It once again fell into the hands of the second box. With just 2 items, the Hong Merchant Guild transaction had already reached a heaven-defying 12.3 million spirit jades, far surpassing all the other merchant guilds. Even the all-access auction couldn't catch up. From now on, there was no doubt that Morningstar Academy would be the sole supplier. With the first 2 items, the third item didn't need the host to say anything. It had already caught everyone's attention. After all, the previous items were already supreme grade, golden nascent, gathering pill, and high-quality 7th grade, great rejuvenating pill. Even if the third item was hard to be better, it shouldn't be any worse, right? Chapter 48-29. He was startled by the sudden screams. Honest Chai, on the other hand, was as steady as Mount Tai, as if he was prepared for this. He turned around and smiled. From the moment you took out the beauty pill, I knew this would happen. Women are creatures that cannot be explained with logic. As long as the beauty pill is placed in front of them, no matter their age or strength, not a single person would be able to resist. He couldn't help but laugh, speechless. He'd thought that only women like Yang Qianxue, whose face was ruined, would be so obsessed with the beauty elixir. He didn't think that all women were like this. No wonder Ning Xuefei couldn't let go of the beauty elixir when she first got it. It was like a woman's life. After the screams subsided, the white-bearded elder continued to announce, 1 high-grade beauty pill, starting price 3 million spiritual jades. It was also a high-grade 7th grade pill, but the starting price was a whole 1,200,000 spiritual jades higher than the great revitalizing pill. It couldn't be helped. This was the classic case of rare things being expensive. In terms of practicality, the 7th grade great revitalizing pill was much more useful than the beauty pill. Unfortunately, it couldn't make women go crazy like the beauty pill. He finally understood. No matter where he went, it was still women's money that was the easiest to earn. As soon as the white-bearded old man's voice faded, bids were immediately called out one after another. At this time, spiritual jades were no longer spiritual jades, but just a simple number. Women were absolutely unreasonable at this time. In just a short period of time, the price had already reached an extremely exaggerated 9 million, far surpassing the transaction price of the 7th grade great revitalizing pill. Just now, he was tongue-tied. In his heart, he made up his mind that if he ever lacked spiritual jades in the future, he wouldn't need to do anything. He could just casually concoct a few beauty pills, and he would be able to easily earn tens of millions of spiritual jades. Among them, other than VIP Box 1, all of the VIP boxes that were ranked at the top had made their bids. Even VIP Box 3, who had never spoken before, was no exception. However, VIP Box 3's voice was that of a woman, while the other VIP boxes were all male voices. Of course, since they were bidding for this beauty pill, it was definitely for women. Unless they were psychopaths, ordinary men would not use this kind of thing. Lin paid special attention to room number 3. The voice that had just spoken was hollow, and it was obvious that it had used some kind of voice-changing technique. However, combined with the ranking of room 3, Lin subconsciously associated it with the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. After all, as one of the 3 giants of the Morning Star Academy, if the divine nun of the Eastern Sea were to personally participate, it would not be strange for her to be allocated box 3. However, Lin could only guess. Before seeing the true face of the person inside, he could not come to a conclusion. However, upon closer thought, while the beauty pill could drive all women mad, surely the divine nun of the East Sea's cultivation and temperament could not be immune to it, right? However, box 3 had only opened its mouth once and did not make another bid. It was not as crazy as the others and had only dabbled in it. Therefore, it was not impossible to say that the divine nun of the Eastern Sea was sitting inside. In the end, the high-grade beauty pill was sold at a price of 5 million spirit jades, falling into the hands of booth number 4. Such a sky-high price was unprecedented. Not to mention this auction, even if all the previous Morningstar auctions were to be added together, this would definitely be one of the best. When the dust finally settled, all the women present were heartbroken. To them, missing out on the opportunity to obtain the beauty pill was like losing their lover. They could only blame themselves for not having enough spirit jades on hand. Such an exaggerated figure of less than 10 million was not something that could be taken out by any ordinary organization. They needed to hug onto a sufficiently thick thigh. Next up is the Hong Merchant Association's 4th auction item, and also the last item of today's auction. 5 profound thunder pills of high quality. The white-bearded elder announced at the end. The crowd was in an uproar. This commotion was even more shocking than when the beauty pill had appeared. Earlier, it was just the women who had gone mad, but this time, it was simply everyone's hair standing on end. What kind of merchant association was this, to actually be able to take out high-grade, profound thunder pills, and 5 of them in one go? One had to know that the profound thunder pill was the rarest 7th grade pill in any Golden Step Academy in the East Continent. After all the Golden Step Academy disciples had a common goal, and that was to break through to the profound ascension realm. Only after that could they advance to the profound sea region, and the profound thunder pill was a must for everyone to break through to the profound ascension realm. No matter how talented you were, you could not do without it. Everyone knew that any large chamber of commerce's high-grade pills, especially the 7th grade pills, most of them came from the alchemists of the various academies. Although each of them had some other ways, they were far from being comparable to the alchemists of these academies. This was because the existence of a 7th grade alchemist could only appear in one place in the East Continent, and that was the various academies. Only those academies could truly afford to provide for these 7th grade alchemists, and other places simply could not keep them. But this time, the Hong Merchant Association did not rely on the alchemists of the academies, and could obtain such a high-grade supply of pills by themselves. Each pill was more frightening than the last, and they could even take out 5 profound thunder pills in one go. This was simply heaven-defying. Seeing the explosive reaction from the crowd, even the usually mild-tempered Honest Chai became excited. If it wasn't for his image as the shopkeeper of a branch, he would have danced with joy in celebration. Your strategy was indeed correct. We don't need a lot of good things. 4 is enough. Honest Chai looked at Lin with a face full of admiration. According to his original plan, other than the pills that Lin had refined at the last minute, he also wanted to add the items that he had prepared for the auction. However, it was rejected by a single sentence from Lin. Although the items that they had prepared seemed rare, everyone could obtain them. Adding them would only lower their own status. Instead of using those useless items to lower our status, we might as well use these 4. This way, we can build up our reputation and leave a deep impression on others. Lin, he smiled faintly. If the previous auction was considered intense, then this time, with the temptation of 5 high-grade profound thunder pills, the entire scene was as crazy as a war. Chapter 48:30. 5 million. Booth 4 immediately called out impatiently. He immediately increased the bid by 2 million, showing that he was determined to win. This was not strange at all. Just now, he was willing to pay 5 million spirit jades for the beauty pill, so naturally he would not be the slightest bit stingy with the Thunder Xian pill. 6 million. Booth 2 immediately called out. 7 million. Booth 4 did not give in this time. For the sake of a Thunder Xian pill, Booth 2 could only offend him for once. 8 million. This time, it was Booth 1 who called out. The originally passionate crowd immediately quieted down, and even Booth 2 and Booth 4 chose to remain silent. Outsiders might not dare to be sure, but the owner of Booth 1 was clear in his heart. This was without a doubt the number 1 person in Morningstar Academy. Since even he called out a bid, everyone had to take a step back. This was the least they could do out of respect. Finally, the first high-grade Thunder Xian pill fell into the hands of Booth 1. Although this price could not even be compared to the beauty pill, it could not be considered low. Everyone was actually somewhat apprehensive. This was only the first Thunder Xian pill. What if he also called out a bid for the next 4 Thunder Xian pills? Should they give in or not? They could not offend the number 1 person in Morningstar Academy just for a few Thunder Xian pills, right? But if they gave in, they would miss the opportunity to obtain the Thunder Xian pill. This was a high-grade Thunder Xian pill. Fortunately, Booth 1 had the demeanor of an expert. After calling out a bid once, he did not call out another bid, allowing everyone to simultaneously heave a sigh of relief. 8 million. When it came to the second profound Thunder Core, the 4th Booth once again gained the upper hand by a show of strength, raising the price to 8 million, immediately scaring a large number of people. Those who wanted to take advantage of the loopholes immediately lost their hopes. 10 million. Booth 2 did not hesitate to call out. The entire crowd was in an uproar. This had actually broken the previous record for the beauty pill. 11 million. Booth 4 continued to raise the price. 12 million. Booth number 2 coldly snorted. This time, Booth number 4 immediately lost the confidence to compete with him. At this price, even he couldn't afford it. After all, he had already spent 20 million spiritual jades. No matter how many spiritual jades he had, he couldn't afford to spend it like this. Lenny looked at this scene and silently laughed. From the looks of it, the owner of the second room was most likely Wei Hebei. Out of the 3 heads of the Morningstar Academy, only he had a tyrannical and overbearing style. Furthermore, he had many disciples and wasn't lacking in spirit jades. Throwing out 12 million spirit jades was nothing to him. Immediately after the 3rd Thunder Xian pill, Booth 3 was the first to call out a bid, 10 million spirit jades. Everyone's gazes subconsciously turned to VIP Room 2 and VIP Room 4. In the end, they discovered that neither of them had stepped forward to bid, and they were simultaneously maintaining their silence. At the level of 10 million spiritual jades, it would be difficult for the other VIP booths to compete with them. Even if they could gather so many spiritual jades, they would have to think it over carefully. Was it worth it to pay such a huge price to offend the 3rd booth? For the 4th Thunder Profound Core, the first person to bid was still booth number 3, and the price was still 10 million spiritual jades. Room 1 didn't say anything, and Room 2 didn't say anything either. But this time, Room 4 couldn't bear it anymore. This was already the 4th one. If this continued, he wouldn't even be able to get any leftovers. He would definitely regret it to death. 11 million. Booth number 4 immediately called out. 12 million. Booth 3 refused to budge an inch. 15 million. This time, VIP Booth 4 was practically cutting off all means of retreat. It had spent so many spirit jades previously. 15 million spirit jades was already their limit. It would be difficult to spend another 100,000. In the end, the profound Thunder Core finally fell into the hands of booth number 4. It seemed that even booth number 3 did not have enough spiritual jades to the point of casually using 15 million spiritual jades to bid for a profound thunder core. The first 4 profound thunder cores were all taken, and only the last one was left. It was still booth number 3 who called out 12 million. It was obvious that booth number 3 was determined to win this thunder profound core. Although everyone could see that 12 million was her limit, at this point, there were very few heavyweight buyers who could beat her. Booth number 4 was already out of ammunition, and booth number 1 and 2 were tacitly silent. As for the other buyers, it was not easy for them to come up with 12 million spiritual jades in such a short time. However, just when everyone thought the dust had settled, someone in the venue suddenly stood up and raised the price. 24 million. Everyone instantly went crazy, and their gazes instantly focused on this person. Even if he was in the first few VIP booths, he would at most increase the price by a few million at a time, but this person actually doubled the price in one go. This time, even Lin was shocked. He looked up and down at this person. He thought that all the top characters were in the VIP booths, but he did not expect that there would be such a hidden nouveau riche in this square. Who is this person? Lin, he asked curiously. Central Chamber of Commerce's Morningstar branch's shopkeeper, Zhao Donglai. Honest Chai introduced. Central Chamber of Commerce? No wonder. Lin, he suddenly understood. Speaking of nouveau riche, the Central Chamber of Commerce was definitely a rich and imposing nouveau riche. They could casually make a few low-end technological products from the secular world and earn a lot of spiritual jades. What business could be more profitable than this in the world? 24 million spirit jades. This was simply an astronomical figure among astronomical figures, and everyone could only shut their mouths. The last Thunder Profound Core had undoubtedly fallen into the hands of Zhao Donglai. This was truly a rich and overbearing nouveau riche. Please do as you please, 24 million spiritual jades. This Zhao Donglai is really bold. Honest Chai's eyes lit up. But it's also fortunate that this is the Morningstar auction. If it was any other auction, even if he has a lot of spiritual jades, I don't think he would dare to bid in public. Why? Linny asked. If he dares to be in the limelight at other places, wouldn't that be asking for trouble? But here, everything is managed by the Academy, so there's no need to be afraid of offending anyone. Moreover, the first few VIP booths are all big shots of the Academy. Even if they want to lose face, they wouldn't go looking for trouble with him, unless they're shameless. Honest Chai analyzed. Indeed, this was the logic. Everyone understood the logic of not showing off one's wealth. It was not worth it to make enemies because of this. Zhao Donglai dared to bid because he had the Central Chamber of Commerce behind him, so he was not afraid of anyone. Of course, he would bid if he wanted to. Chapter 4831. The Hong Chamber of Commerce, which was the finale, had a total turnover of 98 million. When this result was announced, everyone present was stunned. One had to know that a first-rate branch of a top-notch Chamber of Commerce wouldn't even be able to reach this figure in an entire year. Yet, this person had achieved it through a simple auction. This result was simply enviable. Even those big shots breathing had become noticeably heavier when they heard this figure. The crowd did not disperse because Ling Yuanqing once again appeared on the stage and announced in a clear voice, as the Dean of the Morningstar Academy, I announce that from today onwards, the only supplier of the Academy will be the Hong Merchant Guild. As soon as he finished, Honest Chai jumped up in excitement. This time, he really came back from the dead. In the end, it was all thanks to Lin Yi's timely arrival. However, it was not only him and the Morningstar Academy that benefited. This time, Lin Yi also earned a huge sum of money, because all the pills were provided by him. After deducting the necessary materials and the auction fees, he had earned at least 80 million spiritual jades. However, Lin Yi only smiled and did not show any excitement. After all, he did not lack spiritual jades. No matter how many spiritual jades there were, it was just a number to him. Everyone gathered around to congratulate him. Nobody knew Lin Yi, but they all knew Honest Chai. The Hong Merchant Association had made such a big splash today. Everyone knew that he would be the #1 merchant association in the future. As the branch manager, Honest Chai's status would naturally rise. They had to curry favor with him now. Just as Honest Chai was happily dealing with the crowd, a person jumped out from booth 13 and landed in front of Honest Chai. He pointed at Honest Chai's nose and shouted, "This is impossible. The Hong Merchant Association is obviously up to something." Manager Wan, what do you mean by that? Honest Chai looked at the person in front of him, and his expression turned cold. This person was the branch manager of the All-Access Gathering, Wan Zhongjie. Seeing the two of them going head-to-head against each other, the entire audience quietened down. Everyone looked like they were watching a good show. If Wan Zhongjie could produce any evidence, then Ling Yuanqing would probably withdraw his order. It seemed like it was still uncertain who would be the sole supplier for Morningstar Academy. Shopkeeper Chai, you know what I mean? Wan Zhongjie sneered. He suddenly jumped out purely because he was unwilling to accept it. He had put in so much effort to get a 7th grade great revitalizing pill, and he had finally managed to suppress the aristocratic families. Victory was in sight, but who would have thought that he would be slapped in the face like a clown in front of everyone? How could he tolerate this? Shopkeeper Wan, if you have anything to say, you better say it face to face. Do you really think that my Hong Merchant Association is easy to bully? Honest Chai, an honest man, was enraged. Everyone knows that your Hong Chamber of Commerce is in a mess now. I suspect that these elixirs were purchased at a high price from somewhere else at the last minute in your last struggle. I dare to confirm that these medicinal pills of yours absolutely did not come from a single supplier. It must have been pieced together. Wan Zhongjie insisted firmly. So what? Everyone at the side was confused. Even if the elixir didn't come from the same supplier, did it matter? So what? This kind of merchant association only knows how to buy elixirs at a high price at the last minute to put on a show. In fact, they have no long-term value to speak of. Letting this kind of merchant association be the sole supplier of Morningstar Academy. Isn't this harming the Academy's disciples? Wan Zhongjie sneered. Shopkeeper Wan is right. If you want to be the sole supplier of Morningstar Academy, then you have to convince everyone. What's the point of putting together a temporary product? At this moment, someone in the crowd responded. Everyone turned to look and saw that it was Shopkeeper Jean of the Golden Chamber of Commerce. That's right, Shopkeeper Chai. Hurry up and explain. For example, the set of golden gathering nascent pills that my aristocratic families would bring out was specially refined by the same alchemist. It is our exclusive supplier, so naturally, we can guarantee a stable supply. Otherwise, if we could only put together a few pills at the last minute, how would we be able to support the needs of so many disciples? Shopkeeper, how didn't miss the opportunity to speak up? Although these merchant associations were all competitors, and Shopkeeper, how was just cursing Wan Zhongjie in his heart in front of a powerful enemy like the Hong Chamber of Commerce. This could only be considered as an internal conflict. Right now, they needed to unite against the outside world and kick the Hong Chamber of Commerce while they were down. With Wan Zhongjie and the others taking the lead, the other shopkeepers of the other small merchant associations also jumped out and clamored for Chai to honestly reveal the source of the elixirs. Otherwise, the result of today's auction wouldn't count. That's impossible. The source of the elixirs is the absolute core secret of any merchant association. If it was you guys, would you so easily reveal the source of your elixirs? Shopkeeper Hal, why don't you set an example? Honest Chai retorted sarcastically. This? Shopkeeper Hal didn't dare to reply. If he revealed it in front of everyone, what would he do if someone tried to poach him? The aristocratic associations don't need to bear the responsibility of supplying the entire Morningstar Academy. Of course, there's no need to reveal the source of the elixirs. However, your Hong Chamber of Commerce is related to the future of the Academy's disciples. Shouldn't you give everyone a satisfactory explanation? Wan Zhongjie sneered as he changed the topic. The crowd instantly became agitated, and the commotion became more and more intense. The situation was getting more and more out of control. Honest Chai's heart was burning with anxiety. He originally thought that it would be a happy ending, but who would have thought that the situation would suddenly change to such a state? The tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. The old saying was indeed true. Silence. At this moment, Ling Yuanqing finally spoke. Everyone instantly quieted down. This principal of the Morning Star Academy was publicly recognized as the #1 person in the academy. Once he spoke, no one dared to say anything else. Principal Ling, please uphold justice. Honest Chai was instantly elated. As long as Ling Yuanqing was willing to speak, Wan Zhongjie and the others' opinions would all be in vain. Now he could sleep peacefully. Principal Ling, this matter is related to the future of the Academy's disciples. No matter how cautious we are, you cannot be soft-hearted and side with the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Wan Zhongjie and the others hurriedly said. Ling Yuanqing slowly swept his gaze across the crowd and said indifferently, letting the Hong Chamber of Commerce announce the source of the elixirs is not realistic nor reasonable. However, since everyone has doubts in their hearts, in order to clear the Hong Chamber of Commerce's name, why don't you let someone examine these elixirs? I believe they will be able to come up with a convincing conclusion. What does Shopkeeper Chai think? Chapter 48:32. In fact, he was already relieved that Ling Yuanqing was willing to say this. After all, he couldn't possibly say that these pills were refined by Lin Yi. If he did that, it might cause trouble for Lin Yi, and he couldn't bear the consequences. Since you don't trust the alchemists of the commerce, let me do it. A strange-looking middle-aged man suddenly spoke, and the crowd immediately opened up a path for him. This person had green hair and a green beard, and was the head 7th grade alchemist of the Morning Star Academy, Qing Danzi. Grandmaster Qing Danzi? Honest Chai was startled. Although he had a bad premonition in his heart, since the other party was the head alchemist of the Morning Star Academy, he naturally had the right to speak on this matter. He could only nod and say, since you're here to personally test the pills, I naturally have no problems. Good, then take out the pills first. Qing Danzi immediately ordered. Because the auction had just ended, the pills had not yet been handed over to the buyers. Very quickly, the workers gathered all the pills together and brought them out. Looking at this neat and tidy plate of pills, everyone couldn't help but swallow their saliva. No matter how these pills came to be, it didn't change the fact that each and every one of them was a rare pill. Any one of them alone was enough to make people drool. But now, there was a whole plate of pills here, with a total value of more than 90 million spirit jades. It was only because of the presence of a super expert like Ling Yuanqing. Otherwise, with the temptation of 90 million spirit jades, it was hard to say what these people would do. It might even turn into a bloodbath. As long as it's a high-grade pill, especially a 6th or 7th grade pill, the alchemist will mark it with a unique divine sense mark. This is to prove that the pill was refined by the alchemist himself. Therefore, if there's no accident, all the pills here will have a divine sense mark. We just need to check if these divine sense marks were made by the same alchemist. Qing Danzi said as he swept his gaze across the crowd. Everyone nodded their heads in agreement. Even Honest Chai nodded his head in agreement. This way, things would be much simpler. After all, any expert would be able to do it, and not necessarily a pill refiner. This way, they wouldn't have to worry about the other party being biased towards Shopkeeper Hao and the others. After all, as the chief alchemist of the academy, Master Qing Danzi, there were rumors in the streets that he had already chosen to collaborate with the aristocratic union. In particular, the Morning Star auction ceremony had been held because of his stance, so it was obvious which side he was on. After that, Qing Danzi immediately began to check the spiritual sense marks one by one. However, after he had checked all the pills, he suddenly froze and could not speak. How is it? Manager Hao and the others asked impatiently. They were waiting for Qing Danzi to give the verdict to the Hong Chamber of Commerce and invalidate the results of the auction. Qing Danzi frowned, not speaking for a long time. Beside him, Ling Yuanqing glanced at him and personally used his divine sense to examine the pills. Then, he also revealed an expression of surprise. These pills don't have any divine sense marks on them. Not even one. Everyone was in an uproar. Each and every one of them had a look of disbelief on their faces. How could there be no divine sense mark on such a high-grade pill? However, since even Ling Yuanqing said so, it meant that there really wasn't any. According to Master Qing Danzi, since high-grade pills all have their own unique marks, then the lack of divine sense marks on these pills should be considered a special mark. This should be enough to prove that they were made by the same person, right? Honest Chai sneered. Wan Zhongjia, Manager Hao, and the others were instantly dumbfounded. They looked at each other and did not know what to say. They could only look at Qing Danzi. The suggestion to inspect the pills was not just a whim. With their many years of experience as a shopkeeper, they truly believed that these pills were put together by Honest Chai at the last minute. If not, if he really had such an amazing supply of pills, the Hong Merchant Guild would not have fallen to such a state where they were being attacked by everyone. No. At this moment, Qing Danzi's expression suddenly turned cold. He said with uncertainty, "Every single pill here is the masterpiece of an alchemist. Even if one or two don't have a divine sense mark on them, it is impossible for all of them to not have any. This is the best opportunity to stabilize the position of an alchemist. I guarantee that no alchemist will give up on this opportunity easily. To be an alchemist, one couldn't just practice hard behind closed doors alone. To put it bluntly, this was a profession that consumed a lot of spiritual jades. Almost every step of progress required a large amount of alchemy materials. Especially at the 7th level, it was an astronomical figure that was hard to estimate. It was even more exaggerated than 90 million spiritual jades. It was precisely because of this that it was impossible for a 7th-grade alchemist to exist independently. Only a powerful force like the East Continent Academy could afford to support one. In order to pursue higher treatment, all alchemists would try their best to raise their status and reputation. Only then would they have the opportunity to advance further. Qing Danzi had done this himself, and all the high-level alchemists he had seen before had done the same without exception. Supreme Grade Golden Condensing Soul Pill, Superior Grade Grand Revitalizing Pill, Superior Grade Beautifying Pill, Superior Grade Profound Thunder Pill. Every single one of these pills is a supreme pill that is hard to come by even for a 7th-grade alchemist. As long as you put a mark on these pills, you will undoubtedly become the chief alchemist of any Golden Grade Academy. Who do you think would willingly give up on this opportunity? Qing Danzi glanced at Honest Chai. Facing Qing Danzi's invisible pressure, Honest Chai subconsciously took 2 steps back. The others nodded in agreement. No alchemist would not want to become the chief alchemist. Qing Danzi's words were very reasonable. But, these pills truly don't have any divine sense marks on them. How do you explain this? Honest Chai braced himself and asked. It's very simple. These pills originally had divine sense marks on them, but they were purposely erased by someone. As for why they did this, I don't think I need to explain further. Qing Danzi's tone was unpredictable. Grandmaster Qing Danzi is right. Honest Chai, you look so honest on the outside, but who would have thought that you would be so cunning in the dark? In order to obtain the qualifications to become a supplier, you would even use such a despicable method. Too sinister. Wan Zhongjia, Shopkeeper Hao, and the others immediately added insult to injury. You all. Honest Chai opened his mouth in grief and indignation, but not a single word came out. This Qing Danzi was obviously siding with the other merchant groups, but his words were impeccable. Even if he were to argue with him, it was obvious who the crowd would believe. Chapter 48-33. Ling Yuanqing's gaze landed on Honest Chai. Honest Chai panicked. It took him so much effort to come back from the dead. Was he going to die just like that? He couldn't accept it. He couldn't accept it at all. But very quickly, Honest Chai felt that something wasn't right. Although Ling Yuanqing's gaze was looking in his direction, it didn't land on him. Instead, he seemed to be sizing up Lin Yi with a pensive expression, as if he had seen him somewhere before. At this moment, Lin Yi finally walked out slowly, instantly attracting everyone's attention. He arrived in front of Qing Danzi and said, "Who can erase the divine sense mark? Is it you, or is it someone else?" What? Just like honest Chai, Qing Danzi was forced to take 2 steps back, causing everyone to be shocked. Who was this kid? The ones who reacted the most were those in room 3. Lin Yi's guess was right. The one in there was the divine nun of the Eastern Sea, and even Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao were here. It's him. It's really him. Sister Xinyan, you're right. Huang Xiaodao's face was full of joy. If it weren't for the fact that there were too many people below, she would have jumped out of the box. Yes, he's actually here in the Eastern continent. Wang Xinyan was also so happy that tears welled up in her eyes. Ever since they parted in the Southern continent, she thought that she would have to wait for many years before she could see Lin Yi again. She didn't expect to see him so soon. Lin Yi had actually come to the Eastern continent. Since Lin Yi was sitting right below the stage, they'd seen him from room 3 a long time ago. It was just that Lin Yi had his back to them the whole time, and his aura had changed quite a bit after his recent increase in strength. Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao couldn't confirm their suspicions, even though he looked familiar at first. But now, they finally saw his face. That's right, this was the lover of their dreams. It's him. I remember that he was only at the Golden Core stage. How did he become a nascent soul late stage? The divine nun of the East, C, could not help but become rather stunned when she heard what the 2 women said. Due to Huang Xiaodao, she still had some impression of Lin Yi. How long had it been? Even with Huang Xiaodao's powerful aptitude, she still hadn't been able to condense her nascent soul. Her senior brother was already at the late nascent soul stage. Even if he was heaven-defying, it shouldn't be this heaven-defying, right? Could it be that he, Ling Yuanqing, and the others had all misjudged him, and this kid was the real super genius? Let's not talk about the shocked reactions in booth number 3. At this moment, the atmosphere below the stage was already very tense. Qing Danzi looked coldly at Lin Yi and said, "What do you mean by that?" "Nothing. According to what I know, existences at the level of 7th-tier alchemist already have very powerful senses. If you want to erase their senses, you need to be a supermaster at the magnate realm at least. In other words, you need to be at the mountain opening stage at the very least. And it's quite difficult to erase even one. Where do you think the Hong Chamber of Commerce can find so many mountain opening stage masters to do this?" Lin Yi said calmly. The magnate realm. This was also a brand new realm that Lin Yi learned from the ghost. It was a general classification of the great realms of strength. Simply put, from a mountain opening stage, including the earth opening stage, the sea splitting stage, and even the legendary heaven breaking stage, they all belong to the magnate realm. As for the realms below the mountain opening stage, from the foundation establishment stage to the profound ascension stage, they all belong to the heavenly path stage. According to the ghost's words, the heavenly path stage in the 5 heaven stage islands could only be regarded as entering a higher level. Only when one's strength completely stepped into the magnate realm would he be considered to have truly entered the ranks of the masters. Only the magnate realm masters could become the pillars of the various forces and compete with the heroes of the world. As soon as Lin Yi's words came out, everyone immediately quieted down. They didn't know much about the divine sense marking. Just now, when Qing Danzi said that, they felt that it was very reasonable. But now, after listening to Lin Yi's words, they couldn't help but feel that it was indeed the case. Qing Danzi's face changed. He didn't think that at this time, someone who knew about the divine sense marking would jump out. Originally, these people present, including Ling Yuanqing, didn't know much about the divine sense marking of medicinal pills, so they could only agree with what he said. But now that Lin Yi had done this, their intentions were immediately exposed. "Who are you? What qualifications does nobody have to say this?" Qing Danzi directly pointed his spear at Lin Yi. Although using his body to suppress the other party was the worst plan, there was no other choice at this time. A nobody? You can say that, but no matter what, I'm still the honorary vice president of the Hong Clan Merchant Association. Don't tell me I don't even have the qualifications to speak on behalf of our merchant association. Lin Yi glanced sideways at him. Such a young fellow was actually the honorary vice president of the Hong Clan Merchant Association. Hearing this, everyone was instantly shocked. Not only did Qing Danzi's face change, even Ling Yuanqing couldn't help but be slightly moved. However, he suddenly thought of a person. Back in the South Continent Sea, Huang Xiaodao seemed to have a senior brother who was also the honorary vice president of the Hong Clan Merchant Association. Moreover, this person looked somewhat familiar. Could it be that they were the same person? Everyone else looked at each other in dismay. For a top-tier merchant association like the Hong Clan Merchant Association, in terms of overall strength, it was not inferior to any of the Eastern Continent's Golden Step Academies. This young man was actually an honorary vice president. Then wouldn't that mean he was in existence on the same level as the Academy's vice dean? Seeing the disbelief on everyone's faces, Honest Chai hurriedly stood up to testify. That's right. This is our Hong Clan Merchant Association's vice president, Lin. If anyone doesn't believe me, feel free to go to the Middle Island and ask around. Everyone once again looked at each other in dismay. Although they still found it hard to believe, since even the branch manager Honest Chai had testified in front of them, it naturally couldn't be false. Since you're the honorary vice president, does that mean that you're in charge of the Hong Clan Merchant Association here? All right, there's no need to talk nonsense. If you want to prove that your supply is stable, it's very simple. As long as you can take out another 5 Thunder Xian pills, I'll admit that you have the ability. Qing Danzi said with a cold face. 5 Thunder Xian pills. Lin Yi looked at him as if he was looking at an idiot and said coldly, You're going to provide the materials? It's easy for you to say that. Qing Danzi was immediately speechless. Under everyone's gaze, he couldn't help but blush. He must have lost his head from anger. How could he say such words in a moment of hot-headedness? That's right. How can the materials for the Thunder Xian pill be so easy to find? The Thunder Xian vine is a very rare treasure. Someone in the crowd said indignantly. Chapter 48:34. He did not believe Lin Yi's nonsense at all. If a brat like Lin Yi could be a 7th-grade alchemist, then what was he, who had studied for hundreds of years, worth of effort? Moreover, even if he was a 7th-grade alchemist, it was impossible to refine 10 recover pills in a day. It was impossible. We'll know who gave me the guts in a day. Lin Yi looked at him with a faint smile. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and take out the materials. Prepare a room for alchemy for me. We'll see the results in a day. All right, you said it yourself. Qing Danzi immediately sent people to prepare. Manager Hao was overjoyed. The partnership with the Academy was destined to fall into the hands of his Grand Union. Other than the auction venue, the first floor of the Morningstar Union had all sorts of facilities. Not only were there VIP rooms, but there were also many special rooms like the alchemy room. After the materials were prepared, Lin Yi immediately went into seclusion to refine pills. As for the others, they did not disperse. After all, it was only the first day of the Morningstar Union's auction. There would be a series of activities after that, especially the highly anticipated individual auction in a few days. Therefore, they would all stay in Morningstar City for a while. Other than the disciples of the Morningstar Union, most of the others stayed in the first floor of the Morningstar Union. It would be a waste not to watch the show. The onlookers did not disperse. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao wanted to rush down and reunite with Lin Yi immediately, but there were too many people. In the end, they were persuaded by the divine nun of the East Sea. Since they knew that Lin Yi was in the Hong Merchant Association, it did not matter if they waited a little longer. They might as well wait for him to settle his matters first. As everyone waited, a day passed in the blink of an eye. Qing Danzi, Honest Chai, and the others waited at the door of the alchemy room, waiting for the moment the door opened. Hee, you're all here. Lin Yi opened the door and greeted everyone. How is it? Honest Chai quickly went forward. This concerned the life and death of the Morningstar branch. and he was even more nervous than Lin Yi. He was afraid that an accident would happen. After all, failure in pill refinement was a very common thing, and no matter how amazing a pill refiner was, there was no exception. Humph! Is there even a need to say it? Just look at his empty hands. Qing Danzi, shopkeeper Hao, and the others sneered. Empty-handed? Is her eyesight that bad? Find a doctor to take a good look at him. If he's sick, he has to be treated. Lin Yi smiled indifferently. With a wave of his hand, a medium-sized box suddenly appeared in his hand. After he opened it, a wave of gasps could be heard from the surroundings. Qing Danzi and the others' eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Not one more, not one less, exactly 10 grade 7 Great Recover pills. Looking at everyone's expressions of disbelief, Lin Yi laughed silently. He had still hidden one of his cards. One had to know that his luck was pretty good this time. 10 sets of ingredients had been used to refine 18 Great Recover pills. In order to not cause too much of a commotion, he had hidden the other 8. But even so, Qing Danzi was completely dumbfounded. If these 10 Great Recover pills had been prepared in advance by the other party, it would have been fine. But now, they were clearly still warm and fragrant. Without a doubt, these 10 pills were of superior quality. Furthermore, they were concocted within a day. This was practically a freaking miracle. Is this the legendary Absolute Dan? Qing Danzi swallowed his saliva as he looked at Lin Yi from head to toe in disbelief. Absolute pill formation was a 100% success rate. This was the realm that almost all alchemists pursued. Regardless of the grade, this was an eternal dream. Absolute pill formation? This was the first time Lin Yi had heard of this term. But after thinking about it, he understood. With a casual expression, he said, "Oh, this is very easy. What's so strange about it?" Easy. Qing Danzi almost bit his tongue off. Looking at Lin Yi as if he was looking at a monster, he said, "I'm talking about absolute pill formation. How could this be easy? I've never seen any alchemist who could do this. Aren't you afraid that the wind will cut your tongue?" Speaking up to this point, Qing Danzi suddenly froze. This person was not boasting. He had truly achieved absolute pill formation. To him, this was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Perhaps, in the eyes of this person, it really was child's play. Seeing that Qing Danzi was suddenly dumbfounded and silent, everyone thought that this guy was thinking about how to put pressure on the Hong Chamber of Commerce again. Even Lin Yi thought so. But when they saw what Qing Danzi did next, they were all dumbfounded. Plop! Qing Danzi suddenly knelt in front of Lin Yi. His expression became incomparably solemn and sincere as he said, "Master, please accept me as your disciple." What the hell? What kind of play is this? Not only Lin Yi was stunned, Honest Chai was stunned, Shopkeeper Hao was stunned, and everyone else was stunned. Even Ling Yuanqing's expression was a little strange. His own academy's chief alchemist suddenly kneeling in front of someone and begging to be his disciple. This was the first time he had seen something so bizarre. He was clearly scheming against the other party. Why did he suddenly change his mind? Another person who changed his face faster than flipping a book. Looking at Qing Danzi's expression, Lin Yi's mouth couldn't help but twitch. Subconsciously, he thought of Okuda Dam. Only that guy would suddenly change his mind and throw you into the sea. But this person in front of him was a little strange. He was clearly in the middle of a fight, but he suddenly knelt down. Ignoring everyone's strange gazes, Qing Danzi looked at Lin Yi with a burning gaze and said carefully, "If this disciple didn't guess wrong, you must be a mystic level, first level alchemist?" According to the ranks of alchemists, above the 7th level was a whole new realm. This was the legendary mystic level alchemist. Even if it was only a mystic level, first level alchemist, it was still a height that no other 7th level alchemist could reach. They could only look up to it, not be compared to it. Oh, Lin Yi looked at him with an indescribable expression. He didn't admit nor deny it on the spot. Definitely, this disciple has seen many 7th level alchemists, but none of them could refine a 7th level great cyclic Dan so quickly. Not to mention 10 in a day, I haven't even heard of one in a day. Furthermore, This is an absolute success. Other than a mystic level, first level alchemist, this disciple really can't think of a second possibility, Qing Danzi said with certainty. Chapter 48:35. Qing Danzi's expression immediately turned ugly after being ridiculed by the crowd. However, it was impossible for him to give up just like that. He immediately said in a forceful tone, "Fine. Since the materials for the Thunder Xian pill cannot be gathered, I will take a step back. Your Hong Chamber of Commerce only needs to bring me 10 more Great Recover pills within a day. I will give you the materials. Hey, I respect you as the head alchemist of the Academy. That's why I call you Grandmaster Qing Danzi. But aren't you being too shameless?" Honest Chai couldn't take it anymore and said with righteous indignation, "This is called taking a step back? Even if the Great Rejuvenating Pill is easier to concoct than the Xian Thunder Pill, it's still a level 7 pill. Furthermore, you have to bring out 10 in a day. The difficulty is much higher. If you're trying to make things difficult, just say so." The rest of the people were also pointing at him. Taking out 10 Great Rejuvenation pills in one day was too easy for them. Don't forget that there were only 2 Great Rejuvenation pills in the entire auction today, and one of them was from the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Don't say such useless things. As long as you can bring it out, I, as the head alchemist of the Morningstar Academy, guarantee that your Hong Merchant Guild will be the only supplier. Qing Danzi sneered. When he said this, his eyes involuntarily secretly glanced at Ling Yuanqing. He was also forced to say this. Otherwise, even if he had the guts, he would not dare to be so presumptuous in front of Ling Yuanqing. The position of the chief alchemist was transcendent, but it was not transcendent to the point where he could look down on everyone. Luckily, Ling Yuanqing didn't say anything. Instead, he calmly sat down and watched the situation unfold. Qing Danzi let out a sigh of relief. This was a tacit agreement. That's right. No matter what, I'm the Academy's most trusted head alchemist. As the Academy's dean, it's impossible for Ling Yuanqing to side with the Hong Merchant Association and not help his own people. Today, I must trample the Hong Merchant Association into the ground. Oh, are you sure you can make the decision? Lin Yi looked at Ling Yuanqing. Of course. I can also tell you that if you can do it, I'll only sell the pills I concoct to the Hong Merchant Guild. Qing Danzi said. Are you for real? Honest Chai's eyes immediately lit up. Even though he was furious at this fella, he couldn't deny that this was a genuine 7th grade pill master. If this fella only refined pills for his Hong Merchant Association, then he would have a huge supply of high-grade pills in the future. This was something he couldn't ask for more. This was a good thing. Even though he managed to obtain a bunch of level 7 pills thanks to Lin Yi, Honest Chai knew that Lin Yi wouldn't stay here forever. What would he do after he left? If Honest Chai could think of this, so could Lin Yi. If he could really make this Qing Danzi work with the Hong Commerce, then he wouldn't have to worry about the future anymore. This was a good thing that came knocking on his door. With my status, do you think I would make empty promises in front of so many people? Qing Danzi frowned and suddenly turned his head to look at Manager Hao. Faintly, he said, but I'll say the ugly words first. If you can't produce it within a day, that means your supply isn't stable enough. Although your Hong Chamber of Commerce won the auction just now, you will still have to give up your position as the sole supplier to the Hao family metropolis. Everyone finally came to a realization. After going around in a big circle, it turned out that this was Qing Danzi's true objective. He, as the head alchemist of the Academy, purposely went against the Hong Merchant Guild in order to force them to give up their position and give up their partnership to the Hao Family Association. He even skipped the all-access gathering in the middle. Wan Zhongjia's eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. Just now, he was the most enthusiastic one among them. He thought that as long as he could drag the Hong Merchant Guild down, the partnership would automatically fall into the hands of the all-access gathering. Who would have thought that Qing Danzi would suddenly say such a thing? Wan Zhongjia swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue when Qing Danzi shot him a cold glance. Although he was extremely unwilling, He didn't dare to go against the chief alchemist of the academy in the territory of Morningstar City. What if he followed in the footsteps of the Hong Merchants Association and was also targeted and banned? At this time, no one was paying attention to Wan Zhongjie. There were only two people who were being watched, Qing Danzi and Lin Yi. This condition isn't much. You're a level 7 alchemist, right? Do you think you can refine 10 great recover pills in a day? Why don't we change it? I'll provide the materials, and you can challenge me? Lin Yi suddenly said with a pout. This. Qing Danzi was at a loss for words. Outsiders might not know this, but as the chief alchemist of the academy, he knew the difficulty of this task better than anyone else. 10 7th-grade recover pills a day was an impossible task. He had only proposed it to deliberately make things difficult for the Hong Chamber of Commerce. If it was really possible, Qing Danzi wouldn't have proposed it so confidently. After all, he was an idiot. Qing Danzi didn't know how to continue. Just when everyone thought that Lin Yi would use this as an excuse to get out of the situation, he spoke again. Forget it. Give me the materials, and I'll reluctantly refine them for a fool like you. I'll let you know the foundation of the Hong Merchant Guild. What? What do you mean? You're not saying that you'll refine them, are you? Qing Danzi was stunned again. Oh, I forgot to tell you that I'm not only the honorary vice president of the Hong Merchant Group, but I'm also the chief alchemist of the Morningstar branch. I can't refine anything else, but it's not a problem for me to refine a few level 7 great recover pills, Lin Yi said indifferently. As soon as these words came out, not only was Qing Danzi completely dumbfounded, but everyone present was also shocked. Even Ling Yuanqing couldn't help but be moved again. The honorary vice president of the Hong Merchant Guild didn't have to be very strong. In theory, as long as one made a huge contribution to the Merchant Guild, they would have a chance to get the position. So although it was rare, it wasn't too shocking. But a level 7 alchemist? How could such a young guy do it? Lin Yi had already expected everyone's shock. Anyway, his alchemy ability had already been exposed on the warship, so there was no need to continue hiding it. Moreover, it wasn't entirely a bad thing to expose this kind of thing. At least it would make people think more highly of him, and sometimes it would be more convenient for him to do things. There were pros and cons. Just a few great recover pills? Humph, how arrogant of you. Qing Danzi's face was almost the same color as his hair and eyebrows. He sneered and said, "You don't know your place, kid. Don't think that just because you have the backing of the Hong Merchant Guild, you can speak so arrogantly. How dare you belittle us, a level 7 alchemist? Who gave you such courage?" Chapter 48-37. Although this was not a rare thing, there were many alchemists who were stuck at the 7th level, let alone 100 years. Even if they spent their entire lives, they would not be able to advance an inch, and even more alchemists could not even touch the threshold of the 7th level. To be able to reach the level of Qing Danzi was already very rare, but Qing Danzi was not willing to give up. Back then, he was a super genius in alchemy. In just a few decades, he rose all the way to the 6th level, and then successfully reached the 7th level before the age of 100. At that time, he was famous and shocked the world of alchemy. However, just when everyone, including himself, thought that he would undoubtedly become the next profound stage alchemist, he suddenly stopped moving, and he was stuck for more than 200 years. Until today, very few people in the alchemy world mention his name, and even if they knew, they would only say that he was lost in the crowd. It had been 200 years, and Qing Danzi's spirit was almost completely gone. He'd thought that this was the end of his path, and that he wouldn't be able to take another step forward. Who would have thought that he'd run into Lin Yi, a man who could make 10 high-class great recovery pills in one day, a man who had the secret to making them? Qing Danzi's heart suddenly lit up with hope. Compared with alchemy, which he regarded as his life, everything else was fleeting. Even his dignity and pride could be thrown aside. In order to go further, he directly wanted to be apprenticed to Lin Yi on the spot. Although he also knew that it would not be so easy, and what he had done before had completely offended Lin Yi. Unless there was a hole in Lin Yi's brain, Otherwise, it would be impossible for Lin Yi to accept him so easily. But he didn't mind. No matter what, he had to try hard. And what if he could succeed? After all, for him, there was no such chance. It was not so easy to meet a legendary alchemist with absolute success. Moreover, he was the dignified chief alchemist of the college, and if he abandoned his dignity in public, Lin Yi would take the face of the Hong's Chamber of Commerce into account. Maybe he would agree. Listening to Qing Danzi's words, Lin Yi couldn't help but be stunned for a while. He was actually regarded as the legendary first-level mystic stage. This person's imagination was really big. I don't have much to teach you. The path of alchemy is purely taught by the master, and it depends on the individual. You are a level 7 alchemist, after all. You should know this very well, Lin Yi said after a moment of hesitation. Although it was not a bad thing to accept such a chief alchemist disciple, Lin Yi had always relied on the divine armament cauldron for alchemy. What could he teach such a disciple? He couldn't possibly lend the divine pesticide cauldron to him, right? Disciple does not ask Master to impart too many esoteric secrets to me. I only ask that Master can give me a few pointers and share some of your alchemy experiences. That would be enough for me. I dare not ask for more. Qing Danzi looked at Lin Yi with eager eyes. Of course, he knew what Lin Yi was talking about. In fact, he didn't need Lin Yi to teach him systematically. He didn't need it because at his level, he had already formed his own style. Even if he was taught from the beginning, it would be useless. However, most of the time, what stopped him wasn't a systematic problem, but a seemingly insignificant one. At this time, it often only needed a little pointers from an expert to make a big difference. Looking at the other party's extremely sincere expression, Lin Yi couldn't help but be moved. He thought for a moment and said, "Well, I can give you a few pointers, but according to the previous bet, from now on, the alchemy refined by Qing Danzi would be handed over to the Hong Chamber of Commerce." Because of this, Lin Yi didn't mind giving him a few pointers. However, before he finished speaking, Lin Yi originally wanted to say that he would accept him as a disciple. As a result, he didn't expect that with a plop, Qing Danzi would directly kneel down again. Disciple Qing Danzi pays respect to Master. Qing Danzi immediately shouted excitedly. He hurriedly prostrated himself on the ground to pay respect to his master, forcibly holding back Lin Yi's next words. The surrounding crowd immediately went into an uproar. The first time Qing Danzi knelt down, they could still say that this fellow was acting strangely, but now he did it again. This could only mean one thing. This fellow was definitely serious. Lin Yi speechlessly looked at the kneeling Qing Danzi in front of him. What's done can't be undone. He was going to have a disciple for no reason, and it was the chief alchemist of the Morning Star Academy as his disciple. If this news were spread, it would be too awesome. All right, you can get up first. Lin Yi could only stretch out his hand to help Qing Danzi up. Although this wasn't part of his plan, it wasn't a bad thing. At least he got a big backer for honest chai, and with this disciple staying in the Morning Star Academy, he could take care of Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao. It wasn't a bad thing. Shopkeeper Hao and the others sat on the ground with stiff expressions. Now that things had developed to this point, there was no longer any suspense in the auction. Qing Danzi was their greatest backer, but now their pillar of support had turned to the other side, and he had even knelt down and begged to become Lin Yi's disciple. What the hell were they supposed to do? The shopkeepers were extremely unwilling to accept this, but there was nothing they could do. The situation was against their will. What they could foresee was that with a powerful backer like Qing Danzi, no other Hong merchant guild in Morningstar City would be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with them. It was even more impossible for them to get an opportunity like today to kick them when they were down, because no one dared to offend the Hong Merchant Guild. That was equivalent to offending the Morning Star Academy. However, while this result was a tragedy for shopkeeper Hao and the others, it was a joyous occasion for everyone else. It wasn't just Honest Chai and the others. Even Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao, who were still in the third room, were extremely excited. As the two girls cheered, the divine nun of the East Sea was shocked. Her gaze moved back and forth between Lin Yi and Qing Danzi as she shook her head speechlessly. It was not just her. The other heavyweights of the Morning Star Academy, including Ling Yuanxing and Wei Hebei, also stared at Lin Yi blankly. Although they did not know Lin Yi's identity a long time ago, like the divine nun of the East Sea, he was still a founding heavyweight after all. As long as they had the slightest impression of him, even if they could not recall it in the beginning, they would be able to recall it after some time. Right now, they could all remember where they had seen Lin Yi before. Wasn't this the guy they had planned on forcefully taking in as a disciple back then? Back in the sea region of the South Continent, during the first public selection in Jinduan City, Huang Xiaodao had been taken in by the divine nun of the East Sea, while Lin Yi had managed to get away by hiding the nature of his spiritual root. Afterwards, they met again in Y City, and under the advice of the purchasing envoy Qin Deli, the three heavyweights personally went to the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency in order to take in Lin Yi, but they did not succeed in the end. Chapter 48:38. This was not just because his strength had increased by leaps and bounds. More importantly, this guy's identity was just too frightening. Not only was he the honorary vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, but he had also become Qing Danzi's master. In terms of identity alone, Lin Yi was at least on the same level as the three heavyweights of the Morning Star Academy. He might even be a level higher than them. After all, Qing Danzi was the chief alchemist of the academy, and his status was not much lower than the three heavyweights. Yet, Lin Yi had actually become Qing Danzi's master. Just thinking about this was enough to make one faint. However, although it sounded strange, the cultivation world was still a place where strength was respected. No matter what aspect you were extraordinary in, as long as you could reach a certain level of strength, you would definitely receive the respect of the world. The path of alchemy was the same. With Lin Yi's current strength, he was naturally far from being on the same level as the three heavyweights. However, if he really was a legendary profound tier, first-level alchemist like Qing Danzi had said, then it would not be as simple as being on the same level as them. He might even be a level higher than them. Hee, what an interesting young man. Ling Yuanxing glanced deeply at Lin Yi from within the crowd, then turned around and walked out of the first floor of the Morning Star Academy. There was no need for him, the dean, to stand out and say anything. Without a doubt, the Hong Chamber of Commerce would be the academy's only supplier in the future. Dean, you actually let that kid fool you back then. Don't you feel a little regretful? Wei Hebei suddenly appeared behind Ling Yuanxing. He turned around with a strange expression to look at Lin Yi in the crowd behind him. This was actually what he was thinking. In terms of thirst for a genius disciple, he, Wei Hebei, was the one with the greatest desire among the three heavyweights. In the end, he discovered that such a heaven-defying young man had slipped through his fingers. Right now, he was so regretful that his intestines were turning green. It's too late for regrets now. He's on equal footing with the two of you right now. If you still want him to become your disciple, he'll become a laughing stock if this gets out. At the very least, Qing Danzi's expression will be very interesting. Before they knew it, the divine nun of the East Sea had also appeared before them. Beside her were Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao, who constantly glanced back. From the moment they discovered Lin Yi, they were eager to reunite with Lin Yi. It was just a pity that there were far too many people here, so the divine nun of the East Sea finally persuaded them to stop. At this moment, there was only one thing that the two girls wanted to do the most. That was to hurry back to the academy, then sneak off to the Hong Chamber of Commerce to see Lin Yi. Hearing what the divine nun of the East Sea said, Ling Yuanxing and Wei Hebei could not help but smile wryly at one another. They could only look at Huang Xiaodao. Xiaodao, oh Xiaodao, why didn't you remind me back then? Wouldn't it have been better to let your senior brother join the academy as well? With his talent and strength, his treatment would definitely be amazing. Sigh, once Lin Yi joined, not only would their academy gain another genius disciple, but more importantly, they would gain a supreme alchemist who was suspected to be at the first level of the profound level. The benefits of this were immeasurable, but unfortunately, it was too late to say anything now. Uncle Master, this is my senior brother's decision. I can't interfere. Huang Xiaotao stuck out her tongue and looked at Wang Xinyan with a smile. The passers-by all gave way to them and watched the three heavyweights of the academy leave. On the other side, after the commotion of the auction on the first floor of the Morningstar Pavilion came to a dramatic end, Qing Danzi immediately suggested, "Master, do you want to go to our academy to take a look? The scenery inside is quite nice. You can also give me some pointers on the alchemy room. How about that?" "That's fine." Lin Yi immediately nodded. He was still worrying about how he could sneak into the academy and meet Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao. Qing Danzi's suggestion was exactly what he wanted. Honest Chai didn't say anything else. After handing over all the matters on hand to Cui Mingshan, he hurriedly accompanied Lin Yi and Qing Danzi. The following auction had nothing to do with the Chamber of Commerce anymore. The most important thing for him now was to accompany Lin Yi well. At the same time, he wanted to build a good relationship with Qing Danzi, his future alchemist. After all, after Lin Yi left, he would have to rely on Qing Danzi to provide high-grade pills. Under the gaze of the crowd, Qing Danzi personally led the way for Lin Yi to the Morningstar Academy. Having just become Lin Yi's disciple, he was overwhelmed with emotions. He wanted to perform well in front of Lin Yi and think of ways to please him. Qing Danzi took the shortcut. As a result, when they arrived at the gates of the Morningstar Academy, they bumped into Ling Yuanqing's group. Qing Danzi was surprised and hurriedly introduced them to Lin Yi. He thought that Lin Yi only knew Ling Yuanqing and didn't know that the two people beside him were the other two giants of the Morningstar Academy. As they listened to Qing Danzi's introduction, Ling Yuanqing and the others looked at each other. Speak of the devil, and the devil appears. On the way here, they had been talking about Lin Yi and didn't expect to bump into him again. This time, they were really dumbfounded and didn't know what to say. However, Lin Yi didn't listen to him at all. His gaze landed on the two women behind the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. At the same time, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao also looked at him with joy. They were so happy that tears of joy rolled down their cheeks. Although for cultivators, Lin Yi hadn't been separated from them for a long time. Longing was like an illness. The deeper the feelings, the deeper the illness. When it came to Lin Yi and his female friends, it could only be said that the illness was beyond cure. Thousands of words could only be said in this silent exchange of gazes. "Young hero Lin, we meet again." Ling Yuanqing finally opened his mouth after a moment of silence. As the number one person in the Morningstar Academy, it was rare for him to greet someone with such a tone, especially someone as young as Lin Yi. However, with Lin Yi's qualifications, it was completely worth it for him to treat him differently. "Senior Ling, Senior Wei, Senior Eastern Sea, long time no see." Lin Yi nodded with a smile. At this time, Huang Xiaotao's eyes moved. She couldn't help but want to go over and hug Lin Yi, but because Wang Xinyan was standing next to her, she couldn't help but feel embarrassed. After all, Wang Xinyan was ranked before her, and, as the younger sister, she couldn't always be ahead of her older sister. In this regard, Huang Xiaodao was a woman with a very traditional concept of seniority. Wang Xinyan couldn't help but laugh and pinch her hand. The two of them had been together for so long, and they already understood each other very well. She could tell what Huang Xiaodao was thinking with just a glance. There was still a tacit understanding between sisters. Huang Xiaodao blushed a little. Under everyone's gaze, she didn't dare to be too bold. She could only suppress the surging emotions in her heart and walk up to Lin Yi. Her voice trembled as she said, "Senior Lin." Chapter 48-39. Qing Danzi looked back and forth between Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao in disbelief. He asked in surprise, What did you call my master? He's your senior brother? You didn't expect this, did you?" "Lin Yi is my disciple's senior brother." They were all disciples of the three great pavilions in the north. The divine nun of the Eastern Sea couldn't help but laugh. "Qing Danzi, you always want to suppress me, but now you don't have to think about it. You've already become my grand disciple. Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei couldn't help but smile. No matter which academy in the Eastern continent, the chief alchemist position was always at the top, especially in Soaring Cloud Academy, where there was a relatively strong chief alchemist. It was normal for one to become the second-ranked big shot of the academy. In Morningstar Academy, the position of the three giants of the academy was unshakable because of their strength. However, Qing Danzi was not the kind of person who was willing to submit to others. It was impossible for him to surpass the Dean Ling Yuanqing, and it was also impossible for him to surpass the Vice Dean Wei Hebei, who had many disciples. The only target left was the solitary divine nun of the Eastern Sea. Although she was the Vice Dean, she rarely asked about the Academy's affairs. Moreover, she only had two direct disciples, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao. In addition to her strength, the divine nun of the Eastern Sea was the easiest to surpass. In fact, Qing Danzi always had the opportunity to surpass her, and public opinion had already vaguely positioned him as the third most powerful person in the academy. But now, with such a thing happening, it was unlikely. Qing Danzi smiled bitterly and shook his head. Ah, how could this be? This is what it means to be unpredictable. Qing Danzi, you should just accept your fate. Ha ha ha. Wei Hebei laughed. All right, but this kind of thing doesn't matter. For me, alchemy is the most important thing. Qing Danzi laughed. Compared to the academy's status and fame, he only cared about alchemy. As long as he could make progress in alchemy, he was willing to give up everything. Ling Yuanqing and the others smiled at each other. A chief alchemist completely immersed in alchemy was a good thing for the academy. Hee, let me reintroduce you. Lin nodded to the two girls with a smile and introduced, "This is my junior sister Huang Xiaodao from the North Island, and this is my desk mate Wang Xinyan." What? What do you mean by desk mate? Qing Danzi was stunned once again. It wasn't just him. Even Ling Yuanqing and the others had blank expressions on their faces. In particular, the divine nun of the East Sea was even more shocked. She had always believed that only Huang Xiaodao was connected to Lin among her disciples. She had never thought that even Wang Xinyan was connected to Lin like that. However, what did deskmate mean? Master Qing Danzi, don't listen to him, Xinyan said, blushing as she gave Lin a reproachful look. Lin Yi's heart warmed up at that point. It didn't matter how many times he looked at that cute face of hers. He'd never get tired of it. It was just like when they first met on the train. No, I'm not a master. Qing Danzi hurriedly waved his hands and corrected himself. Since you're my master's deskmate, then you're my senior. Your disciple greets deskmate. Xinyan didn't know what to say to that, and the others all had strange expressions on their faces as well. This Qing Danzi guy really knew how to lower himself. It was one thing for him to be Lin Yi's disciple, but now he was calling Xinyan master? What was he going to call Ling Yuanqing and the others? Lin Yi was smiling as well. He hadn't expected this Qing Danzi to be such a clown. After all, he was a 7th-rank alchemist, and it was rare to see someone as open as him. Originally, everyone was still a little stiff because of their status. After all, Ling Yuanqing and the others were the big shots of the academy, and they couldn't possibly put down their pride in front of the juniors. However, after this incident, the atmosphere became much livelier, and a rare burst of laughter could be heard, attracting the attention of the students passing by. However, among the crowd, only Honest Chai couldn't put down his pride. With his cautious personality, it was difficult for him to relax in front of Ling Yuanqing and the others. "Shopkeeper Chai, why don't you return to the Hong Merchant Guild first? I'll look for you later," Lin Yi instructed. Okay, then I'll take my leave first." Honest Chai heaved a sigh of relief. Being in the same place as so many big shots was really stressful. Not to mention talking and laughing, it was so stressful that he couldn't breathe. However, after leaving the Morningstar Academy and returning to the business district, Honest Chai raised his head high again. After all, he was now representing the Hong Merchant Guild, the future #1 merchant guild in Morningstar City. After watching Honest Chai leave, Lin Yi and the others entered the Morningstar Academy. Thinking back to the time when he first came to Morningstar City, Lin, he was still having a headache about how to enter the Morningstar Academy. Now that he had a disciple like Qing Danzi, everything became much easier. Ling Yuanqing and the other big shots of the academy all treated Lin Yi differently. As for the other students, they only dared to watch from afar. They didn't even dare to go near, in case they made the big shots unhappy. Along the way, everyone finally put aside the issue of seniority caused by Qing Danzi and decided to talk about their own matters. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to differentiate clearly. Lin Yi was Huang Xiaodao's senior brother and Qing Danzi's master, while Huang Xiaodao was the direct disciple of the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. It was a complete mess. They wouldn't be able to sort out the seniority issue in their next lives. They could only go according to the seniority they were used to. After walking together for a while, they parted ways very quickly. Lin Yi was dragged by Qing Danzi to his alchemy room. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao originally wanted to follow, but Lin Yi persuaded them to go back with the divine nun of the Eastern Sea first. After all, Lin Yi would still go find them after he left Qing Danzi's place. As the chief alchemist of the academy, Qing Danzi's residence was naturally in the best part of the academy. Not only was the scenery beautiful, but the spiritual qi was also overwhelming. Following Qing Danzi into his alchemy room, Lin Yi's eyes lit up. It was an extremely intricately designed seclusion room. It was a place specially used for alchemy. Next to it was a huge storeroom, which stored all sorts of rare materials. As expected of the chief alchemist of the academy, the size of the storeroom seems to be even more exaggerated than my own. Lin Yi couldn't help but sigh. Chapter 4840. After all, this kind of thing needed to be accumulated bit by bit, and it was not something that could be made up for with just a few fortuitous encounters. Master, what do you think of this disciple's spirit medicine storehouse? Qing Danzi showed Lin Yi around, his face full of pride. Very good. It is the best I have ever seen. Lin Yi nodded. Is that so? Qing Danzi was pleasantly surprised. He thought that with Lin Yi's alchemy realm, he must have seen countless super alchemists. Little did he know that apart from his own, Lin Yi had never seen anyone else's spirit medicine storehouse. It was not a lie to say that his was the best. Lin Yi smiled faintly and didn't expose him. In truth, Qing Danzi was proud to have such a huge storage of elixirs. He had all the essentials and rare elixirs he could think of, and it had almost everything he could think of. If one had a nitpick, it would be the lack of a few heaven and earth treasures similar to the Thunder Xian Ratan. However, these rare treasures could only be found by chance. They could not be obtained just because one wanted to and one needed great luck. Did it take a long time? Lin Yi asked with a smile. 300 years. Qing Danzi looked at his accumulated painstakingly, and then turned to Lin Yi and said, the spirit medicines here have been systematically collected since I was 10 years old. I have persisted until today without a break. 10 years old? Lin Yi was surprised. Most people at this age were still playing with mud. He did not expect that this guy had already begun to do such advanced things. Yes, Master, you don't need to be surprised. I come from an alchemy family. Any family member with a little bit of aptitude will be taught alchemy from the age of 10. Distinguishing and accumulating spirit medicines is the first lesson, Qing Danzi explained. I see. Lin Yi nodded. This was what it meant to win at the starting line. If that's the case, your family shouldn't be lacking in skilled refiners, right? Is there a need to ask me to be your master? Lin Yi asked curiously. Master, you misunderstand. Although my family is an alchemy aristocratic family, it had already declined long before I was born. Not only was it no longer glorious, but it was also constantly bullied and humiliated. Being able to maintain the title of an alchemy aristocratic family was purely a fluke. Previously, it had always been a precarious situation. It was only after I became a 7th-tier alchemist that things changed slightly. Every family has its own difficulties. Lin Yi looked at Qing Danzi sympathetically. After this disciple became a seventh-grade alchemist, although the situation was temporarily stabilized, the situation is still not optimistic because in order to stabilize the name of an alchemy family, the family must have at least two seventh-grade alchemists. But our Qing family only has one disciple. The other disciples don't even have a sixth-grade alchemist, let alone a seventh-grade alchemist. Qing Danzi said bitterly. There's such a thing? What about you? Linny asked. Because when I was promoted to a seventh-level alchemist, I was still somewhat famous in the alchemy world. The other families were afraid of me and didn't dare to make things too difficult for me. Otherwise, when I advance to the first level of the mystic level, they won't be able to bear the consequences. So they made an exception and gave us a deadline of 200 years. As long as I advance to the first level of the mystic level within 200 years, I can continue to keep the title of an alchemy family. Otherwise, I will be removed from the list and lose all the resources that belong to an alchemy family. Qing Danzi paused here and smiled bitterly. From the time I became a seventh-grade alchemist until now, 200 years have passed. It won't be long before the deadline arrives. This was the real reason why he didn't hesitate to give up his dignity and beg to become Lin Yi's disciple. For a seventh-level alchemist, not making any progress in 200 years wasn't a particularly bad thing. If it wasn't for this, Qing Danzi could have continued to explore on his own. But seeing that the deadline was approaching, if he didn't work hard to do something, the Qing family would be removed from a list. Once they lost the various resources that belonged to an alchemy family, it would be impossible for them to return to the ranks. So, you became my disciple in order to break through to the first level of the mystic level. Lin, he looked at Qing Danzi strangely. This guy was really desperate. Not to mention that he wasn't a legendary mystic level alchemist. Even if he was, it was impossible for him to advance to the mystic level in such a short period of time. No, disciple is far from the top of the seventh level alchemists. How could I dare to think about the first level of the mystic level? Qing Danzi shook his head repeatedly. Then why are you doing this? Lin, he asked strangely. The only thing disciple can do now is to go one step further. Seventh level alchemists are also divided into different levels. Disciple only wants to be the first level so that when those people come to remove my name, I can at least have some leeway. Otherwise, I'm afraid I won't even have the chance to bargain. Qing Danzi smiled bitterly. In fact, there was one more thing he didn't dare to say. That was, if he could win over a first-level mystic-level honorary elder, he could still retain the name of an alchemy family. But he had just forced Lin Yi to become his family's elder. How could he force Lin Yi to become his family's elder? Oh, then what level do you think you are now among the seventh-level alchemists? Lin Yi asked with great interest. Barely second level. Qing Danzi thought for a moment and explained, with Disciple's current ability, I can almost refine all seventh-level dawn, and I can often refine high-quality dawn. But there is a very terrible problem, and that is I can't guarantee success every time. As for absolute success like Master, I can't even think about it. What he meant by success every time was not a 100% success rate, but a successful core formation every time. For the vast majority of alchemists, even if they could only refine one pill out of 10 sets of ingredients, it would still be considered a success. Is that so? Then have you thought of any solution? Lin Yi asked while rubbing his chin. Because of the existence of the god's armament cauldron, his alchemy has always been overproduced. No matter how bad it was, he could still achieve a near 100% success rate. Unless the level of the dawn was far beyond his ability, then the alchemy would fail. But as Qing Danzi said, Lin Yi had never encountered a situation like this before. He obviously had this ability, so why did he often fail? Chapter 48-41. Lin Yi's eyes lit up and quickly asked, and the result? I stayed in Middle Island for 3 years, and I didn't even get to see Master Zhang once. I couldn't take it anymore, so I had to go back to the school first. Otherwise, I might not be able to keep my position as the head refiner. Qing Danzi sighed, depressed. The actions of an expert are naturally secretive. Lin Yi smiled sympathetically, Back then, he'd purposely stayed in Nakajima just to see Zhang Liju, but it was to no avail. The only difference was that he didn't have to wait 3 years like Qing Danzi. It's my regret that I didn't get to see Master Zhang Liju, but now that you're here, it's the same for me to ask for your advice, Qing Danzi said excitedly. Lin Yi smiled awkwardly. How could he compare himself to a cheap master like Zhang Liju? Zhang Liju could see the problem with one look, but he might not be able to see the crux of the problem. After all, in terms of elixir-making experience, even Qing Danzi was more experienced than him, let alone Zhang Liju, a Dan god. How about this? Tell me the problems you've encountered in detail. I'll help you think about it when I get back. Linny said, Yes, thank you, master. Qing Danzi was overjoyed and immediately told Lin Yi about his problem from beginning to end. He was afraid that Lin Yi wouldn't remember it, so he wrote it down on a piece of paper and gave it to Lin Yi. Only then did he feel relieved. Okay, then I'll go back first. I'll let you know when I come up with a solution. Alchemy can't be rushed. Take it slow. Linny nodded. Yes, I'll remember your words, master. In front of Lin Yi, Qing Danzi didn't have the arrogance of a head refiner at all. In fact, he was even more respectful than a new disciple. After all, Lin Yi was the legendary first-level mystic in his heart. Alchemy didn't care about seniority, and age was often not an advantage, but a disadvantage that couldn't be made up for. This was because when a refiner reached a certain age, their thoughts would become rigid, and it would be hard for them to make any huge breakthroughs. Those who could truly become a mystic refiner were all super geniuses, just like Zhang Liju. As for the so-called late bloomers, although it wasn't that there weren't any of them, there weren't many of them. After saying a few words of encouragement, Lin Yi left his residence under Qing Danzi's grateful and respectful farewell. The sky had already darkened, but the lights in Morning Star Academy were still brightly lit. All sorts of expensive fluorescent stones could be found everywhere, scattered on both sides of the road. This was practically the sky-class island version of the street lamps. Qing Danzi lived in the Qingdan Pavilion, and the godly nun of East Sea lived in the Donghai Pavilion. Since they were both elders of the school, the distance between them wasn't too far. After passing through a small path in the forest, it took less than half an hour for Lin Yi to reach the entrance of the Donghai Pavilion. Under normal circumstances, teachers and students didn't live together, and each had their own residences. Even direct disciples didn't have the privilege of entering the Donghai Pavilion. However, the divine nun of the Eastern Sea only had 2 direct disciples, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao. She was always afraid of dropping them, and she was afraid of melting them. Plus, they were easily coveted girls. Of course, she couldn't bear to let them live alone outside, so the 3 of them always lived together. Before Lin Yi could activate the protection circle, the door suddenly opened, and a serious-looking old woman walked out. Are you Master Lin? The 2 ladies have been waiting for you for a long time. Please follow me. Lin Yi paused for a moment, then quickly nodded. All right, thank you. He didn't know where this old woman came from, but although she looked like an ordinary servant, her aura was hidden, and the pressure she gave Lin Yi was even stronger than that of the West Mountain powerhouses he'd met on the way here. How could such an expert be just a servant? The old woman didn't say anything, and brought Lin Yi to a courtyard after a few turns. The ground was covered with all sorts of fluorescent stones, and it made the already quiet night even more beautiful. In the middle was a simple pavilion, where Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were chatting. Lin Yi, you're finally here. The 2 girls' eyes lit up when they saw Lin Yi. There weren't as many people as there were during the day, and they couldn't care less about their modesty anymore as they rushed into Lin Yi's arms like pigeons. With one hand holding Wang Xinyan and the other around Huang Xiaodao, Lin Yi would be the envy of every man in the world. This was what it meant to be a dreamlike winner in life. Haha, why do I get the feeling that you 2 are getting fatter? Lin Yi was in a good mood as he teased. The 2 girls didn't look any different from before, still slim and slender, but he could feel the difference when he hugged them in his arms. They were much more voluptuous now. What? Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao blushed at the same time as they slapped Lin Yi's palms. No matter what kind of girl they were, their weight was always one of their biggest concerns. Lin Yi laughed heartily. He didn't think that getting fatter was a bad thing at all. On the contrary, if the two girls were as skinny as they were the first time he met Wang Xinyan, then he'd be worried that something was wrong with them. Being a bit fatter was actually a good thing. It was still pleasing to the eye, and it was more comfortable to hold. Oh, right. Are you and Donghai's seniors the only ones living here? Lin Yi asked. He hadn't seen anyone else on the way here other than the old grandma. Yeah. Other than us and Master, there's only the deaf grandma who brought you here. Wang Xinyan nodded. Grandma Rome? Lin Yi jumped in shock. What's going on? Am I in the wrong place? Since when did you two become Princess Rome? Huang Xiaodao didn't get the joke, but Wang Xinyan couldn't help but laugh. It's not an easy Rome, it's long deafness. Didn't you notice that the deaf grandma can't hear people talking? Oh, that's true. Lin Yi rubbed his nose, speechless. The other person hadn't paid any attention to him other than the first sentence. He thought that she was just being serious, but it turned out that she was a deaf grandma. Chapter 48-42. Tagging along? Is there someone here looking for trouble? Lin Yi's expression changed. That's rare. With Xiaotao and my status, as well as Master's reputation, normal students would only dare to watch from afar. No one would dare to bully us, but the East Continent has always been full of weirdos, and there are always some toads among them. It's not convenient for Master to scare them off himself, so the deaf nanny took over. Every time she shows up, she scares away a bunch of people, Wang Xinyan said with a smile. Hee, so you're saying that the deaf nanny stole my task? Lin Yi couldn't help but smile. He was the school beauty's bodyguard, and Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao were undoubtedly the school's beauties. They needed someone to protect them, and he wasn't here. Fortunately, the deaf nanny was here, so you have to thank her properly. Huang Xiaodao giggled. After spending so much time with Wang Xinyan in the East Continent, she had become a lot more cheerful. She couldn't wait to ask, let's not talk about us. How have you been since we parted ways in the South Continent? Yeah, how did you suddenly become a late-stage nascent soul realm cultivator? Did you have another adventure? Wang Xinyan asked curiously. When it came to talent, especially when it came to improving one's strength, her spongy body was second to none. Even Huang Xiaodao couldn't compete with her in this aspect. However, even she was only a mid-stage nascent soul realm cultivator. One had to know that she was already an early-stage nascent soul realm cultivator back in the South Continent. On the other hand, Lin Yi wasn't even a mid-stage gold core realm cultivator back then, but now he was a late-stage nascent soul realm cultivator. How long had it been? I did have an adventure, but it was a life-threatening one. I might not be able to survive another one. Lin Yi shook his head and smiled. Hurry up and tell us. The two girls urged. All right. Lin Yi had no choice but to tell his experiences to the two women in full detail. From the South Continent's escort agency gathering to being hunted down by the West Mountain sect master, he told them everything in detail from beginning to end. He didn't even hide anything about the five-poison swamp. After all, the two women were on his side. If he didn't even trust them, there would be no one else in the world who could make Lin Yi truly open his heart to. In that case, even if he became invincible, it would still be a tragedy. Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao clicked their tongues in wonderment. Compared to their peaceful school life, Lin Yi's experiences were simply thrilling. Just listening to it was enough to excite them. The two women couldn't help but look at each other tacitly. Sure enough, Lin Yi was a magical person. No matter where he went, something magical would happen. Lin Yi reunited with the two women after a long time, but the three of them didn't have too much of an ambiguous relationship. After all, this was the divine nun of the Eastern Seas territory. Even if the two women didn't mind, Lin Yi wouldn't dare to do anything inappropriate in a place like this. It felt like he was secretly dating while he was still a student. It was quite interesting when he thought about it. The three of them just sat in the pavilion and chatted. Even after chatting for an entire night, they still weren't satisfied. Instead, they became even more spirited. It seemed like they could talk for 3 whole days and 3 nights without any problems. Yen'er Xiaodao, the divine nun of the Eastern Sea, suddenly appeared in the courtyard and smiled at Lin Yi and the 2 women. "Greetings, Senior of the Eastern Sea." Lin Yi stood up in a hurry and greeted her. Although he was Qin Danzi's master, he was obviously a junior before the divine nun of the Eastern Sea, since they had agreed to discuss their own matters. "There's no need to be so polite. This is the breakfast porridge I made myself. Have a taste, young hero Lin." The divine nun of the Eastern Sea came to the table next to them and served everyone a bowl. However, she didn't address Lin Yi arrogantly just because she was Wang Xiaodao and Huang Xiaodao's master. "Good porridge. Senior EC has great skills." Lin Yi drank a mouthful and was full of praise. Although it was just an ordinary rice porridge without any spiritual medicine in it, for some reason, he could not help but become immersed in it as soon as he drank it. All the distracting thoughts in his mind disappeared, and it had the effect of clearing his mind. To think that an ordinary rice porridge could have such an effect. The divine nun of the Eastern Sea really was an extraordinary person. Master's breakfast porridge is the best in the Morning Star realm. You can't buy it no matter how much spiritual jade you have. Master Ling and Master Wei often rack their brains just to get a bowl of porridge. You have to drink some more. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao looked at each other and smiled. Of course, Lin Yi nodded. After finishing the bowl in 2 or 3 mouthfuls, he helped himself to another bowl without holding back at all. He was the living embodiment of a hungry ghost reincarnated. The divine nun of the Eastern Sea smiled. Lin Yi had always taken a liking to her, and because of the 2 girls, she loved Lin Yi even more. Although she had only met Lin Yi a few times, Lin Yi was basically a nephew in her eyes. "All right, these are the Thunder Quintessence pills I bought from the auction yesterday. Give them to Yen'er first." The divine nun of the Eastern Sea took out a pill and passed it to Wang Xinyan, before passing another to Huang Xiaodao. "These are supreme grade golden nascent pills I asked for from your senior Uncle Wei. Xiaodao, you can use them right now." As for the Thunder Quintessence pills, I'll think of something else after you condense your soul. The supreme grade golden nascent pills from yesterday ended up in the hands of the second box. The owner of the second box was Wei Hebei, and with how many years of friendship the divine nun of the Eastern Sea had with him, it was obviously nothing difficult for her to obtain just one of them. Although Huang Xiaodao had no use for the Thunder Quintessence pills for now, the divine nun of the Eastern Sea still had a headache, as Thunder Quintessence pills were very rare. Even if she did find one, she might not be able to obtain 5 of them all at once like yesterday. If there were only 1 or 2, the competition would definitely be even more intense. With her wealth, it would be very difficult for her to obtain any of them. "Senior, you don't need to worry about the Thunder Quintessence pills. I've already prepared them for the 2 of them." Lin immediately took out 2 Thunder Quintessence pills from his bosom. Originally, he wanted to give them to Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao as soon as he saw them, but in his excitement, he had forgotten about it. If it were not for the divine nun of the Eastern Sea's reminder, he probably would not have remembered. He had refined a total of 8 last time. He had given one to young Qin and sold the other 5 in the auction. He had purposefully kept these 2 for the 2 girls. He did not care about them, as he could refine more at any time. "What? You have this too? Did you refine the Thunder Quintessence pills as well?" The divine nun of the Eastern Sea was immediately surprised. Although discovering that Lin was a 7th grade alchemist was unbelievable, she had thought that Lin only knew how to refine 7th grade great recovery pills. She had never thought that Lin had refined all the pills in the Hong Merchant Guild. After all, it was rather shocking. She never thought it would actually be true. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.